Welcome, everybody.
Good. All right, thank you.
Please make sure you grab a lunch and we're gonna go ahead and get started. We do have a couple of folks who are joining us online today. We're keeping track of them by including their name tags on the front table. So just so you know what other members are here, but we're unable to attend in person. Thank you all for being here today. I'm looking forward to turning it over to your executive leadership team to welcome you into the space, provide some opening remarks. I'm looking for who is not currently eating their lunch. Maybe while we do that, I will just walk us through the agenda. Roman, you want to go ahead and advance it to the next slide and tell folks what to expect today. So we will move into public comment and our consent agenda here shortly. The draft meeting minutes from our last meeting should be in your packets. I'm going to provide a brief update on the next round of workforce ready grant funding. We'll move through a review of our medium-term objectives, and then we have the opportunity to hear from some folks from Intel about their digital readiness programs, specifically acceleration of the future of work. And then we'll take a quick break and then we'll have the opportunity to hear from our partners from the Department of Education, who will provide an update on the CTE state plan. And then we're going to be joined by HEC's legislative and policy affairs director, Kyle Thomas, who will be here this afternoon to walk us through some legislative updates and a look at the budget and legislative process and what is coming in 2025. We'll have a bit of a discussion about the consortium's priorities and your priorities, and then we'll wrap up the next steps. Are there any questions about the agenda for today? This should be in your practice as well. If not, I will now turn it over to your leadership team to provide some opening remarks.
Thank you. So just a couple of things that we're seeing in the kind of broader trends within the tech sector. So speaking very president CEO, CAO, we're definitely, it seems in the last 6 weeks, hearing from a lot of employers that as they look at some of the trends around automated decision systems and AI, that people are looking to integrate it more across a variety of different functions. And in some cases, it's proceeding really quickly. In other cases, it's a much slower adoption rate. But the consensus among all of them is that it's here to stay, and it's only a matter of time before it starts to get more broadly integrated in a number of roles. And so I think the focus of this group, trying to get ahead of what AI is going to mean for the future of workforce is important and timely, and it was a topic that came up during the recent workforce summit, and it's also something that is coming up as one of the key questions or sort of input points in the employer groups that we'll talk about a little bit later that are being around the state. And then also just a couple of comments on the workforce summit in Salem. I thought it was very well attended. It kind of underscored the fact just in that observation alone, the workforce is top of mind for a lot of folks right now across sectors. And it was also great to see the type of collaboration there, both reflected on the panels as well as in the side conversations that I had among folks in the room. It seems like there's a common theme around wanting to achieve better alignment across infrastructure, whether it comes to data and standards. That's going to be important. There's a lot of work to be done there. It sounds mundane, but it's hugely important for the overall work. And then I think too, there's a lot of opportunities to get future ready more top of mind for folks. And that was great. I think it really resonated. The public-private, nonprofit collaboration, I think was something that really resonated with people. And so thematically, I'm pleased with how that went and excited about the future work heading into the summer.
Thank you. Well, I will add in the higher ed spaces, many of us that you're not either completing our academic years or close to it, so we're kind of getting over the finish line, a lot of celebration. But also kind of that moment to see where we've been, to see where our graduates are, what are they going to do. And then also looking ahead to reset and then figure out how next year we do even better. I will say some of the observations I had from the town summit, first of all, it was awesome to see so many people there. And also I ended up in a lot of spaces where you have a lot of like people, so it'll be a lot of educators or a lot of higher ed folks. And so to see the diversity in the participants was exciting. I agree with what Skip said and really highlighting the Future Ready Oregon work. And look forward to improvements next year, and I can get even more of that for your voice.
Good afternoon, everyone. Background, I have also worked on AI computing and area. To add to what Stephen said, from the talent summit in Salem, it's there. Last week. I was on a couple of panels. The first one was really the theme of collaboration across academia, government, industry, community organizations, and the second one was on panel on data and policy. The CEO of New Science, which is a platform that helps students discover their natural abilities and connects them to career pathways, which I thought was super interesting. And then what's going on in the AI world, I just want to tell you briefly that over the past week, you must have heard that OpenAI released their new set of models called GPT-4o, O for Omni, and that is a multimodal model, so it takes into account text, images, video in real time, and it's so conversational because of the real-time aspect. It's remarkable. And for the first time, I'm seeing the capability of these models add reasoning to the inputs. So if you haven't checked it out, I strongly suggest looking at the GPT-4o models and just look at the video. That itself will give you an idea of how quickly this capability is evolving. So thank you all for coming. Look forward to the agenda.
Thank you so much. I think we're gonna go ahead and do some quick introductions around the room. We have some folks who maybe haven't been with us in a while and want to make sure everybody knows who's here as well as for our guests. So I'm gonna pass this microphone around, and just so you know, you have to be really friendly with the microphone for it to pick up. So let's see, what do we have time for? Why don't you just share name and the organization you're representing and maybe what you're most excited about with engaging in the consortium work. Can I start with you?
Thank you. Hopefully this is close enough. So I'm Joe Cole, I'm the Dean of the Tennessee College of Engineering and Computer Science at Oregon State University. I'm really excited to be here today with the opportunities around workforce development and diversity in sort of tech spaces. It's really exciting.
Hey, babe. Right, you got related, real close. I'm Brooke Brownlee. I'm manager of labor workforce and economic prosperity for Portland General Electric. I'm also the director of the Community Workforce Coalition, which is an organization that we convened a couple of years ago with organizations around the state dedicated to building an equitable and inclusive clean energy workforce. And we are very excited to be part of this because technology is critical to the decarbonization of the electric sector, and it is in pretty absolutely everything we do.
Yeah, Wayne Hopkins, Director of the Steam Coalition. I think what's most exciting is the opportunity to innovate workforce pathways that are 16 years.
I'm very excited, manage on position at Foundation. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is, looking forward to, is a little bit self-explanatory, how easier to find, qualified candidates that are running with systems, so hopefully we get industry partner for it all.
Good afternoon, again, I'm Nathan, or it's very interesting to speak with young people who are students as well as industries. On both sides, you see people who are afraid and who are excited. It's a very interesting time to have that conversation right now. Some people think, well, whatever we teach is not going to be relevant right away. Some people think, well, what are we going to do with it? So I think this is very common, very exciting to be part of this.
Afternoon, everyone. Andrew Goff, Work Systems, the workforce board for Multnomah and Washington counties. I think I'm excited about just getting in alignment with everyone around where our priorities are moving forward.
Good afternoon, Jeff Hampton. I'm a regional development officer with Business Oregon. We're the state economic development agency. And I suppose what I'll say I'm most excited about today is probably not that different than what I've been excited about every time I've had an opportunity to engage in this process. And that is to think about how business and government and nonprofits can all collaborate and work together to find solutions to solve the workforce challenges ahead of us. So I think it's just great to be part of this. Thank you for.
Hi, I'm Deb Hill, Executive Director for Oregon STEM. And was really impressed with how many nonprofits were in the room at the Talent Summit. And I think a lot of that goes back to Future Ready Oregon and how you're building this kind of ecosystem. What I'm most excited about is that T of STEM's technology with AI coming on. It's going to be in every single job. And I think looking at data models and different AI tools and generative AI tools that really help a child see their aptitudes, their potential, and start to build these tools to make sure that there's programs to study for us to help these students meet their potential is what I'm really excited about.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Rhodes with the Oregon Department of Education. I believe what I'm excited is to see the work to align systems between our public and private sectors to really target our students. From the Department of Education, I feel like that's always my North Star in the work is what's going to benefit our students, and seeing a generation of students who view the workforce differently than the generation prior. I think this work will be really invaluable to giving them the experience they need to find where it is that they fit in our workforce. So I'm excited about what it has to do for our students looking forward.
Hello, everybody. I'm Janelle Ives. I serve as Oregon's CPE State Director, and I am really excited about this alignment of interests, but also how it really aligns between industry, CBO, and education. Because our educators are under pressure. They have a lot going on. How do we keep them informed and give them the tools they need to be producing those skills in our most time?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Ritchie-Noel. I am the Education and Workforce Policy Director for the Oregon Business Council. And this is a question, but I think we're talking about what makes us most excited about this work. And I've heard so many examples of what I would say. I think just very much this new focus on partnerships. I'm really encouraged by the role that the industry is playing in terms of really re-examining the sustaining role in getting to work at that aggregate level as opposed to kind of individual partnerships, which have always existed. So I'm just really excited about kind of reframing of our role and real focus on being organized. Really well.
Hello, I'm Sarah Gavino from the Long Streams Community Action Team. I work for a nonprofit. I'm a technology workforce manager there, and also the manufacturing manager. I guess one thing I'm excited about is I guess the current like 22 manager I'm going to school right now, so I'm also doing some AI programming and stuff like that with, that side of it. So I am excited to hear all of the things that are going on in technology and being a part of this program and also being able to like, show that to others in my community. Pretty cool.
Thank you. There. Super. I think, it's really exciting to hear, from all of you, sort of these themes around alignment and partnerships and, innovation. And I think today, as you hear more about shifting into our medium-term objectives, I think you'll hear those themes emerge. Couple of housekeeping items, make sure you get lunch if you haven't already. Feel free to help yourself to beverages. And then restrooms are down that front hallway over by, between Roman and otherwise, let's jump into our agenda. Roman, I think we've got public comment next. Do we have anyone registered for public comment online or otherwise? No public comment. All right. Then we will move to the consent agenda. You all should have a copy of the meeting minutes. You should have received those in advance. They're also in your packet. Because we did advance some decision making, I just want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to review the minutes if you have any edits or otherwise. If not, happy to approve the minutes by consensus when folks are feeling comfortable with that. Do you want to make a motion? I probably don't need someone to make a motion, but I will let you make the motion and then that gives somebody something to react to.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes from the February 29th meeting.
I'll be the second.
Great, any amendments? Otherwise, anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, I'm seeing no amendments to the minutes, so we will move to approve the minutes as presented and move into our next agenda item. Which is me providing a quick update on the workforce ready grants. So you remember last time we met, we worked through the process of recommending priorities for that next round of workforce ready grant funding. I'm happy to announce that the healthcare, manufacturing and technology RFAs are all moving through the review and approval process. We've been working closely with our partners in procurement and DOJ for review and anticipate that all three RFAs will be open very soon. Very soon. And that's the update, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions to the best of my ability, yes.
So how long will people have to prepare their proposals and something?
Because that hasn't been released publicly yet, I will just assure you that we have continued to be responsive to partners in terms of providing substantive period of time to prepare and respond. But the RFA itself will be released soon, and that information will be available then.
I got the last one.
I'm well trained, I'm well trained. Any other questions? Yes, Deb.
I just have one point from a nonprofit's perspective. So, all of our SAM registrations have run out from the last RFA. So that first SAM registration, for those who don't know, is about $700 for a nonprofit. I missed it by 7 days. The RFA closed and then it took 90 days So we're getting a lot of reminders, that's another $500, but if you're a nonprofit that's constrained, you don't always want to spend that money if you don't know if you're going to align to the RFA. So my only recommendation is, and they're very clear at the federal government, you see that it will take minimum 60 days to get your renewal through, so that we would keep that when we post it at minimum 60 days, so that people would have time to get their news down here. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Deb, and I will own that, I was not responsive to an email, but I was doing my part, because the answer to that question has now been posted publicly. And I can let folks know that, in order to fully execute a grant agreement, because these funds are federal, American Rescue Plan Act funds, that, an organization receiving funds through the Workforce Ready Grant program will have to have an active, SAM.gov, registration. Where there's a little bit of leniency, because that's true both for grantees and subawardees, anyone who's receiving funding through these projects, is that they have to demonstrate that they're on a pathway towards that registration. So hopefully that's helpful. Thank you for the comment. That is available on our website if you'd like more information. Okay, any other questions? If not, let's move into our next steps, and then I have 2 more slides, and then I'm gonna pass the microphone off if you don't want to listen to me anymore. Next slide, please, Roman. So first, just an acknowledgement that we have met our short-term objective. And that was to advance the the recommended priorities for that next round of Workforce Ready grant funding. As a reminder, this group really focused on that balance between upskilling and reskilling opportunities for folks who may or may not be in tech occupation or in employment in the tech sector. And then opportunities to recruit and train a diverse technology workforce. Again, not specific to tech sector, but ensuring that the tech workforce needs are being met across all occupations. So congratulations. That was an adventure in consensus building, and I just wanted to take a moment to pause and acknowledge that you all did that great work. And now we move into the what's next. And in terms of our next steps, we've been thinking about these medium-term objectives as the building blocks from now through December 2025, so about the next year and a half. We're gonna start moving into what does it mean to provide strategic policy and funding recommendations specific to the high-tech workforce, identifying gaps and opportunities. We've already done a bit of that in advancing priorities for this next round of funding, but continuing to build on that, and the uniqueness of this space where we have partners across K-12, community colleges, universities, community partners and industry partners really informing this collaborative approach. We are gonna move into revisiting our work group structure for those of you who were able to attend the kickoff meeting. Feels like a year ago. We started with some set work groups, and I'll be working with the leadership team over the next couple of months to start thinking about what makes the most sense around a work group structure for the Technology Consortium. And then myself, along with the other consortium strategists in healthcare and manufacturing, are starting to think about success measures. How do we measure performance? How do we measure moving the dial for the tech workforce? And how do we think about the collective impact, measuring the collective impact of this consortium's work? So we will be bringing some ideas to you at our next meeting. I think the next slide has a bit more of a timeline. The first square, I think, says May through July. And we are currently in the process of working with a consultant to conduct a series of employer focus groups, and you'll hear a bit more about that from Skip in just a moment. At our July meeting, I anticipate we'll be updating our charter, and part of that will be looking at the work group structure as well as identifying some performance metrics. And then the next square says August through October. We expect that in the coming months, we'll be focused on developing and informing policy and funding priorities. Again, you're gonna hear a little bit more about that later today at PEC's legislative process from our legislative and policy affairs director. And then at our October quarterly meeting, we will continue our conversation about performance metrics, but we also expect at that point to hear a final report on the employer focus group findings, and we'll start to look at our 2025 strategic plan. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of what the next 6 months look like, and I'm gonna turn it over to Skip to provide an overview of the employer focus group work that we are embarking on.
Thanks. So we have focus groups geographically distributed throughout the state, including Portland Metro, Lane County, Rogue Valley, and Columbia Gorge. And the goal is really 10 to 12 different participants per region, with a wide variety of different perspectives represented, both in terms of type of company, size, stage, et cetera. And as we look at the next slide, there's some like foundational questions that we really want to kind of drill into with these focus groups. So one is getting an understanding from employers how they're forecasting their workforce needs, and whether that methodology may have changed, given that we're in a pretty dynamic time, shall we say, in terms of workforce planning, both on the private sector side, but of course also the variety of providers across higher ed, workforce, and K-12. We're also going to be looking at industry recognized skills and seeing where employers are really putting their priorities in terms of credentials and their education and training needs. And really this is with an eye towards seeing if there are certain well-defined career pathways that can be identified and kind of better defined, which will then provide guidance in terms of credentials, standardization, and looking to kind of promote those opportunities to candidates as they emerge. And then another area is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what are the strategies employers are using? And I think part of that is also, are they working, right? So are employers seeing some returns or really key impacts that are positive, or are they struggling? So that could be an area of future direction or attention from this group if it turns out that employers need a lot more help there. We may also see some variety across size and stage of it as well. And then finally, AI and future work. I mentioned this during my opening remarks. This is something that continues to be top of mind for a lot of the private sector employers out there. And this is something we want to drill into. We go to the next slide. We have a little bit of timeline here. So pre-assessment interviews are happening right now with consultants, and this is both defining the foundational areas, identifying potentially regionally specific issues, like by way of example, in Gorge, there's a large concentration of UAV or unmanned aircraft and supplier networks there. And there may be specific hiring needs as well as employment opportunities there that can differ from, say, Rogue Valley. Maybe not, but we'll find out through these focus groups. June to July, the focus groups will be convened, and then the goal is the final report at the October quarterly meeting. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, oh, you even stood your card up.
My tutor has trained me well.
Yes. Oh, you know what, yeah. Thank you.
On the locations, were those chosen by the density of tech-enabled businesses, or did we, how did we? Is it Central Oregon and Eastern Oregon and Coast or not on that list of agencies?
That's a great question. Do you want to take that question or you want to?
Yeah, one go first, and
Or correct me if I'm wrong. So yes, density, I think, not just based on technology, like the tech sector, but also really looking at tech employment. So as you all have talked about, the technology occupations bridging pure tech employment as well as other sectors, we really wanted to look at tech employment. And so that's how we landed on that board, to give us a bit of diversity where there's maybe some pockets, concentrations of occupation.
Yeah, one thing about Central Oregon as well is that there's a large concentration of remote workers and kind of individual contributors. And that's also something that we're seeing show up in places like Hood River as well. And then, of course, in the greater Portland metro, but even in Lane County too. So Rogue Valley, and we've seen pockets of this over the years, and Central Oregon is probably the iceberg as it relates to that. It's not a new phenomenon, and it's had remote workers for quite some time. And so that's gonna be something that I think would be interesting to see how it's reflected in some of what we're hearing from employers in given region, because there's also been an assumption over the years that, well, we should be promoting more remote workers because some of those folks looking for their next opportunity might decide to go to a local employer. I think that remains to be seen at times, and then a lot of those folks are working for companies not located in Oregon, and that's been the case for over a decade now. So it's some interesting stuff here, I think, and potential learnings coming out of these folks first.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, or can you pass the microphone, okay? Thank you.
Thank
You go, push hold the mute button down on this side, there you go.
You talk about the median term of directors. How this is aligning with what business council may be doing in terms of the future where you are, and as we work with, CEOs and other city and what we see. So what's lying beyond the duration of future where you are as envisioned right now? What can we do to help?
That's a great question and an excellent teaser for a later agenda. So when Kyle, our director of legislative policy affairs, is here, he's gonna walk us through sort of the higher education coordinating commission's budget and policy development process, and a little bit of a look ahead to the 2025 session and 25-27 biennium. Yes, I can say though, as we think past our medium-term objectives to our long-term or ongoing objectives, it's important to remember that these consortia are advisory to the Workforce and Talent Development Board, and the commission itself really with a focus on understanding sector-specific workforce and talent development needs, identifying gaps and barriers, and developing strategies to address those. So that work is sort of outside of the rhythm of the legislative cycle. And what that will be for this group probably remains to be seen as we start to do our 2025 strategic planning and what priorities might emerge. We've identified a couple of priorities that we've used to inform that next round of workforce ready grant funding. And so we'll go through that priority setting exercise again. Right, any other questions? Thank you to those of you who have been participating in the pre-assessment interviews. And if you're interested in how to be more engaged with that work, if you haven't been so far, please let me know. But again, this is really in response to our first couple of meetings where we heard from you all that it would be hard to integrate education and training responses to employer needs without a bit more robust feedback from the industry. Similarly, it would be difficult to inform strategies, recruitment and retention strategies, opportunities for advancing diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Would be hard to identify strategies without hearing more from employers. So we heard that same theme across healthcare and manufacturing, and had the opportunity through our relationship with graduating in the middle group, Portland State University, and the Oregon Consensus Group that Turner's not able to be here today, but we'll just pretend he's there. But through Turner's Group with Oregon Consensus, we've been able to take advantage of that resource and repurpose it a little bit to hear directly from employers. We're hoping that that will be fruitful. All right. With that, we are running a little bit ahead of schedule, so I'm gonna look at Courtney. Do we know if Christina is ready and online? Super. Well, I'm gonna pass the microphone down to Ben Cat to introduce our next agenda.
Thank you, Jennifer. I came across a program called the AI for Workforce program that Intel had developed. They are partnering with, I know at least two community colleges in Oregon that may have changed. One was BPC and the other one was Umpqua Community College. And they have a goal to expand this program to community colleges across the nation. So I was interested in this program. I reached out to Melissa, who's on this consortium. I don't think she's here with us today, but she asked me to get in touch with Courtney, and here we are. So Christina from Intel is going to be talking to us about their future of work programs, particularly interested in the AI for Workforce program. I want to understand how well this program is being received today, and what is it that we can do to improve it, and what is needed to expand this program. So thank you, Christina, and yours.
Technical difficulties.
While Rhoda's working on connecting with Christina, I'll introduce Courtney Martin, who is able to join us today from Intel, and Christina was hoping to be here and had a flight delay that disrupted. So she, I believe, is online and ready to join us. Is there anything you want to say while Rhoda's troubleshooting?
Oh, sure. Say hello. This is a familiar face. Really, we've had a lot of us lately, so I appreciate you having us here today and just to really reiterate, and a lot of it everybody mentioned from the summit. We had some folks from Intel participating there as well. And thank Kyle for the great panel sheet put together and opportunities with Dr. that day as well, and just how enthusiastic we are right now as well about thinking about some of the workforce needs a little bit differently, and the collective definition of what we really need together as industries and more, especially as I participate in. So just want to thank Christina again for taking us to be here with us today, and opportunity to share.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes. Wow, perfect timing.
Okay, great. I'm unable to start my video, so I'm here, but you just see some flowers, I think, right now. We'll see if we get video going, but at least you can hear me. Thank you for having me. As Courtney mentioned, my name is Christina Ortiz, and I work for our government affairs group here at Intel. I was at the airport for about 3 hours this morning, but our plane just wasn't willing to take off to head to Portland. So just bear with me doing this virtually today. So I'm here really to talk about our Intel digital readiness programs, including what you guys have heard as AI for workforce. I really want to start with Intel's purpose. I know you're all in Oregon, we're in your backyard, you're probably very familiar, but I do like to remind people that our Intel purpose is to create world-changing technology that improves the lives of every person on the planet. And I start here because people often ask, well, why these digital readiness programs? And to us, it's more than just building technology, but it's enabling people to use and really benefit from that technology. And one way we can do that is by growing digital readiness skills, including AI, in the wider population. All right, let's see if I have ability to click through the slides. I couldn't tell. Yes, I do. Okay, great. So AI is everywhere, right? It's really across business segments. It's across industries right now, education, healthcare, right? I mean, just today, I used AI to unlock my phone with my face. I used it to talk a text. I hardly ever type a text anymore, so I talk to text. I rode in a car that had autonomous features like lane keeping technology, right? I could go on and on. So AI isn't just the future, it's here today. Most of us are interacting with it every day, and not really to, I guess, not even really thinking about how we're using AI every day. So AI is everywhere. But we will increasingly use AI more and more in the workplace, and not everyone is prepared for this change. So AI is everywhere, but AI talent is not yet everywhere. So the disruption is ahead. Are we ready for this change? Are we there yet? So as the digital economy grows, right, every aspect of our lives are impacted by that. So over the next decade, we're going to continue to see continued digitization of everything, right? The way we work, the way we learn, the way we connect. And what that means is that all work is becoming digital, right? So as every part of our lives change and become more digital, that will increase the need for digital skills at work and in our everyday lives. Digital skills are things like AI, they're green skills, but they're also trust and understanding that technology that we're using and the data behind it and the ethical impacts of that. So as that's coming across, it's impacting all the workforce. So I like to throw some numbers out there. Billions of people in the workforce, many of them are in what we call our informal economy or gig economy. But when we look at those billions of people in the workforce, less than 2% are in technology industries. So the vast majority are non-tech jobs. And we tend to think of AI as impacting the tech workforce, but it's really impacting the entire workforce, right, across the gamut. And we really need to get our workers ready, right? If we look at generative AI has the ability to reshape 300 million jobs. Most studies agree that a large portion of the workforce is going to need reskilling or upskilling because of the changes coming from AI. And right now, we don't have enough plans in place to prepare that workforce for the changes coming with AI and that are already here. And what that means is a lot of studies are predicting a talent shortage by 2023. So not enough people with those AI skills to take advantage of it. So what we like to say is AI won't replace people, but people who use AI will replace those who don't. Okay. Another thing to be aware of is that there will be an unequal distribution on the workforce of the changes in AI. So sorry, I'm a little slow here with my clicking on the screen. Okay, so we're citing a report by Jobs for the Future. It was in partnership with Intel, and they have this great framework to kind of explain how AI is impacting work. So here on the left axis, you'll see that there's human involvement in a task or a skill on the job, right? So, and then on the bottom is the more machine-led versus human-led. So AI will do one of 5 things, right, to skills and to tasks, which is either replace, displace, complement, or augment or elevate. And jobs will be impacted differently. So down here on the corner, replace, so AI will replace certain job tasks, such as manual, repetitive tasks, routine assembly, inventory management. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, right? This means that this can actually help with worker safety if we get them out of some of these repetitive jobs. It also can improve job satisfaction if we move those workers into tasks that are more, stimulating, more interesting than that repetitive work. So that's actually a good aspect. But something to be aware of is more of these tasks down here that will be replaced and displaced by AI, kind of those, like we said, repetitive, basic problem solving, information gathering. These tend to be where workers that make lower incomes. These are those types of jobs, right? Versus if we look at job tasks and skills that will be augmented or elevated by AI, these are things like organization and planning, right? How, you think about using AI to write meetings for your minutes, or maybe how to refine a presentation that you're working on, how to help you in a negotiation task, right? Those are jobs that will be tasks that will be augmented and elevated by AI. They tend to be more higher paying jobs. So what this means is that we have the risk of making a larger divide. So we'll call it an AI divide, similar to the concept of the digital divide, right? That more of the lower wage workers will have a larger impact to their job skills by AI than some of the higher paid jobs. So this is something we need to be aware of, and we need to make plans now to address, right? So our new blueprint is that we say we really need to require our workforce to be AI ready, but AI ready doesn't just mean building AI technical skills, but really being prepared for that new human to machine partnerships. So making all workers aware of AI, but also we need to spend time investing in programs that are also building those non-AI-able skills. So we call them those human-centric skills that AI cannot currently do. Things like negotiating between parties, people management, conflict resolution, right? Motivating teams. Those are tasks that AI can't do. So we really need to make sure that we're preparing our workforce with those skills, because those are going to become even more valuable. All right. I didn't mention anything about questions, and I can't quite keep my eye on the chat while I'm also going through the slides. So we will definitely have time at the end for questions. But maybe Courtney or Jennifer can help me if we think there's a pressing question that we need to stop along the way, then just let me know. All right. Okay. I'll take that as an okay. So bringing AI everywhere really starts with bringing AI skills for everyone. So if we look at this graphic here, and it's not showing, let me see, it doesn't have the axes on it, but on the left axis, it's AI technical skills complexity, and on the bottom is the number of jobs. I know, thanks, yeah, it didn't show up my graph, sorry there. But if you look at the green areas, so this is traditionally where AI education has focused on AI researchers, AI engineers, and developers. So these are people that are going really deep, your PhD, advanced degrees in AI, is working on research, building models, heavy programming. But if we look, it's really a small number of jobs in that green area that need those deep technical skills. Now, if you look at the red circles, AI solution builder and power users, this is going to become a very important portion of the workforce, and it's a growing portion of the workforce. We feel that we need to put more emphasis on developing workers in this area. So what these folks do is AI solution builders really focus on using AI existing technologies to solve business problems. So think of something like, I know there's a chemical manufacturer here in Arizona that now they may not want to build the AI model from scratch, but they would like to use an AI model in their chemical manufacturing process to help identify issues, right? So computer vision, data tracking. So I don't need to know maybe how to build a model from scratch, but I need to know how to build that solution or apply that solution to how to help my particular industry. And then there's also AI power users who are end users of that, right? So think of someone now slightly further down in that process at that chemical manufacturer. They have models up, it's being maintained by that solution builder, But now I'm a power user because I'm looking at the data from the AI model, and it's going to trigger my decision on how maybe I tweak the manufacturing facility, or I change my chemical balance, right? So I'm a power user of that data from those AI models, or those outputs of those AI models. So this is where we really think that we as a society, as a country, should be putting more emphasis on developing folks with the skills of solution builders and power users. Additionally, we have the blue areas of AI consumers and non-users, not as many non-users in a very developed country like the US, but those AI consumers, like I mentioned, I just use my face to unlock my phone. These folks are really expecting AI systems to just work, right, without kind of questioning them. But we want them to become responsible AI consumers as well, right? Think a little bit about what's behind it. Is this a case where AI should be what I'm interacting with? So that's kind of, sorry, a long explanation of how we see the different types of jobs and users of AI evolving. One thing just to emphasize again is I talked a lot, I guess, about technical skills, but also how we apply those. And I really want to go back to those human-centric skills, right? Folks in the red and hopefully the blue areas really need those strong skills, right? Empathy, conflict resolution, questioning, is this a valid result? Is this a responsible use of this AI model? So we want to make sure that as we're building workforce development programs, it's not just focused on the technical side, but it's also building those human-centric skills. All right, let me go on. So Intel's response to this AI skills gap is our digital readiness programs. So for us, our digital readiness programs really encompass, right, skills, trust, and ability of people to use technology. So per the United Nations, building people's digital readiness is essential for achieving more inclusive outcomes from our digital economy. And I kind of mentioned it high level in that first sentence, but digital readiness is about the digital skills, which we've talked a lot about here, right? AI technical skills, cybersecurity, right? Semiconductors is hot right now, right? Making sure that we're having enough skilled workers for the semiconductor industry. But it also means trust. So building confidence in those digital systems, and we can do that by having transparency and accountability within those systems and data, and educating people about the questions to ask, as well as responsible use of that technology, right? Understanding opportunities and risks. What are good opportunities to use the technology? And really, Intel is committed to bringing AI everywhere by expanding these digital readiness skills for all. So as we dig deeper into our digital readiness portfolio, here in the US, our primary program has been our Intel AI for Workforce program. And the objective of that program is to empower both current and future workers, with AI skills they need to get jobs in our digital economy. Our target partners in this program are community colleges, so public institutions across the country, preferably those already considering an AI program, and many are, who can mobilize their industry, community, and government partners. The target students are current and future workers, so adult learners looking to be AI aware. That's kind of that outer blue ring that I talked about in the previous diagram, or follow a career path as a power user or a solution builder in that red area. And then, excuse me, one moment, I'm going to get a drink of water. And then a little bit more about our program. For us, it's really about opening opportunities, right? We have that huge skills gap. We need to enable more people to enter and gain these skills. So in order to lower that barrier of entry, we've built our program so that there's no prereqs for students. So no tech background, no programming experience needed to engage with our curriculum. It really starts at an entry level AI awareness, and then depending on when learners go, where they go through the journey, then they may go into the deeper tech topics, including Python programming, natural language processing, computer vision. Our program curriculum is flexible and it's customizable. So each of our colleges is using it slightly differently, depending on what their local workforce needs are. And it covers a wide variety of topics. So I mentioned natural language processing, computer vision. We have a lot of use cases looking into industry-specific areas now, like AI for manufacturing. But because we know we want our learners to be able to get jobs, it needs to go beyond those technical skills. And our curriculum does include social and career growth skills, things like collaboration, design thinking. We have a lot of components around ethics and understanding bias within models and data. And then beyond the curriculum, what Intel provides is a lot of support for colleges as they launch these programs. So we do professional development, which is faculty training, and we provide guidance on their implementation, and we also have a strong peer network of colleges that they can learn from. As we've grown this network and this program over the last 3.5 years, we've been able to pinpoint what really makes a successful college partner. And it's really about commitment, collaboration, and community. So these 5 factors are strategic thinking. So they have AI kind of on their mind. They're either considering a future roadmap or they've been talking about it, at least within the school. And we've seen in the last year, this is the majority of colleges we engage with now know that they need to do something to address AI skilling. They just don't necessarily have the resources to get started. The second is a desire to work with all academic departments on AI. So as I mentioned, right, there's those fewer people who are going to be deep AI practitioners, but we need a lot more to be power users. So we want schools that are going to think beyond their IT department, but maybe how their nursing students or their automotive repair technicians can benefit from AI and how they can embed this program or this curriculum into a variety of departments. A third really important factor is a college leadership champion. So senior administrator champions support from the top is really helpful because that's going to help them get the resources they need. And it also hopefully provides stability when there's personnel changes at other levels. I mentioned resources, right? Faculty resources. A lot of our community colleges, right? They're doing amazing work with not a lot of faculty. So it is sometimes a challenge to get faculty time to go build this program and integrate it. We found partners to be more successful when they do have that leadership support to give, a percentage of the time from the faculty dedicated to program setup. And then the last very important factor is strong industry partnerships. So those existing connections that desire to go mobilize their industry, community, and government partners is really important. Those industry partnerships are key for class projects, like really bringing the AI use cases to life when you can explain how that can be used in, company XYZ down the corner, as well as internship opportunities. And most of our schools, we do recommend they have an industry advisory council, which most do. Many are often using the built model. Can go to the next slide. So we've been managing this program in the US now for about 3.5, 4 years now, and we're up to 112 institutions in 39 states. It often takes a school, 18 months to 2 years to actually start offering classes. So we have 112 institutions, not all of them are offering a class yet. Some are in the planning stages. In Oregon, we do have 2 college partners. So I want to dig a little deeper and share with you what they are doing in Oregon. All right, so Umpqua Community College down in, I believe it's Roseburg, has been a partner since 2021. They are focused on creating a pathway for AI mechanics and technicians is what they call them. And I equate that very much to our power users and solution builders. And their path was really formed by the idea that not everyone who works in AI will be like a programmer, right? A hardcore programmer, but most AI applications will require those skilled technicians to utilize and maintain AI models. So we became partners in 2021. They were fortunate enough to receive a $40,000 grant in 2022 that really laid the foundation for the program. So that was a grant, a one-time offering from the American Association of Community Colleges, Intel and Dell. And that allowed them to get some hardware as well as faculty time to go set up the program. And they now are offering a certificate in automation learning or machine learning and robotics. So it's a 24 credit certificate. It can be earned as standalone, or it could be layered on top of an associate's degree in computer information sciences. And that's currently available for enrollment. They have 21 students in the initial cohort, which started in fall of 2023 with their Intro to AI course. And here's a lovely picture of some of the students at work in that program. I've also included a link to a great story about Umpqua. And one thing that I really want to call out that I think Umpqua is amazing at is really catering to the needs of that community, of that Southwest Oregon community. So they have, all evening classes, so student can attend after work because they primarily have adults who are already working. They have online access for all their classes to aid those working adults that, don't have childcare. They can't leave to go attend a class in person. So Umpqua is really trying to make it easier for them to learn from where they're at. And they have a strong focus on kinesthetic and hands-on learning. And this was really driven by their primary professor, John Blackwood, because he realized this was attracting a lot of students who were in manual labor, kind of hands-on jobs. And so he's really working hard to keep that hands-on component in the learning with the AI program. So we can go on to the next slide. So what's made Umpqua successful? It's a number of things. I mentioned John Blackwood, who's the lead professor there, extremely dedicated and capable. He's won several teaching awards, and he, like most of the other Umpqua staff, is committed to teaching the class and the lab, so he has that deep connection with the students. They also have had supportive senior leadership. So they had been discussing the idea of an AI program for several years before they came on with Intel, but they didn't have the funding to get started. So they had the support, they just didn't have the funding. And so when the grant opportunity came around, that was what was able to kickstart them. They also have a really strong understanding of their local workforce needs. So they've engaged their business and community partners, which to date are healthcare, one of the casinos, the county government, and they're also working with a credit union. And they also understand their rural students, right? They're really trying, as I mentioned, to have that hands-on component to build on the existing skills of those rural students and workers and really up-level them to their next career opportunity. And next slide. So as I mentioned, Umpqua has been really successful, but they can be even more successful with help from all of you. So a couple key things, areas where they need help is funding, right? To develop and sustain their programs, but then more specifically to fund students majoring in AI and cybersecurity. So most of their students are working full-time, often in manual labor jobs, right? They have families to support. So they could really benefit from more scholarships or grants for students in that program. Additionally, Umpqua told me that they also could use help with data tracking. So their specific ask was around the Oregon Employment Department data, if they could get an artificial intelligence category added to track these specific opportunities, that would help them better track employment in that vertical. And one, right, because they want to make sure they're meeting the needs of the wider state. But also, secondly, they believe that they would like to start an associate's degree program, and they believe that there's a need out there, but they really need to back that through employment data, and having that subcategory on the Oregon Employment Data or Department website would be very helpful for them. And then the third thing is, I mentioned internships or those ties to industry, right, is really encouraging employers to provide paid internships. So now all of you know there's this great program at Umpqua. They're building students with these AI mechanic skills. That's what the actual Oregon AI Task Force called it back in 2020, AI mechanic. So they're building students with those skills. Please go back to your workplaces, tell your partners, whether you're in public or private, about these students, and please reach out to Umpqua with potential opportunities for their students. All right, so now we'll go on to, I'm sorry, did I hear something? Nope, okay, I'll keep going. So our other partner in Oregon is Portland Community College. So they were actually a partner since 2021. Really excited. They got 9 instructors that went through our lead faculty training back in 2021. However, over the last few years, they've had, implementation, I'll say, has been impacted by change in personnel as well as strategy changes. So right now, and I have more information, correction, update to the bottom bullet. Right now, they are still kind of in a scoping and exploratory phase. They don't have any current plans to offer future AI training or courses. What they are going to do as their next step is engage employers to understand more their entry-level requirements for AI before they build any specific courses or decide to add that to their college programs. All right, so outside of Oregon, I just wanted to share a few success stories on how we, Intel from private industry has worked with the public community colleges as well as government institutions on workforce development programs. So we'll go ahead and click through. So if we look at, end of day results on the students, I've got 2 great examples here. So a few of our colleges have been running the program now to where they have associate's degree graduates. That's usually a 4 to 5 year ramp from when they start the program planning to when they have their first graduate. So over in Houston Community College, we have Denzel, non-traditional student, worked a number of jobs around the country, went back to school, probably late 20s, early 30s, saw AI. He was always a super smart guy. This is what really got him excited and engaged. And he just excelled in the AI program at Houston Community College. He did an internship with NASA. He's, won some AI project contests, and he's actually graduated now with his associates in AI. He decided he wants to keep going with his education, so he's now pursuing a bachelor's of science at University of Houston, and he's also working with Seed AI, which is a national advocacy organization. Olivia Thornburn over here in Arizona is a slightly different, pretty different track actually, Chandler Gilbert Community College. She was a traditional student, went to Chandler Gilbert right out of high school, loved animals. She did their pre-veterinary program and graduated with an associate's degree. And in her semester where she was off and applying for vet schools, she saw the AI program, thought it was interesting, took a class and loved it. And it completely changed her trajectory. She was accepted to vet school, but decided not to go. And she leaned in, took a few more AI skills. So she didn't do the full degree. She just did a few classes to get those skills. And she is now working at Apple on their machine learning team. So that's another example of, kind of the interesting paths that our students have taken. So those are individual student stories, but I also wanted to share some of our public community college partners. Miami-Dade out in Florida. They've been a great partner. We first met with them in 2021, and they already had AI, on their plan, right? Something they wanted to work on. Florida was working on a AI statewide framework. So they knew they wanted to do it until we came in, we had courses, we trained their faculty, it just accelerated them to go launch their program. Fast forward to today, we've had a lot of milestones with Miami-Dade. They have students now enrolled in an associate's degree in AI, 2 different 4-credit certificates. They recently had a bachelor's degree approved, so they'll have students next year in a bachelor's degree track for applied AI. And they're really thinking beyond AI for emerging technologies, right? They're looking at digital trust, which is kind of a combination with cybersecurity. They're trying to provide programs for their wider community. So they're offering some free public serving programs in partnership with Intel, AI for Citizens and Digital Trust for All. And now they're also offering AI training through non-credit continuing ed. So this is really focused on workers in industry who, don't want to come back to school for a couple years, but want to lean in for a couple months and get the latest skills in AI. So why is Miami-Dade a role model? Why did they move so fast to implement all these programs? I think there's a number of factors, really their strategic thinking. As I mentioned, they had AI on the roadmap. They have the support from the state talking about this emerging area. They have their senior leadership champions, right? The president as well as the vice president, like they actually have a role at their community college, vice president of innovation and tech partnerships. So that's Antonio Delgado. So you can see that they really invest their time, and it's a priority for them to have partnerships with both local and national industry and government. They're closely aligned to their state and county governments, which provides a pretty strong funding stream, both for program implementations as well as scholarships. So many of their students in their emerging tech degree tracks actually go to college for free if they're Miami-Dade residents, because they have so much of that funding for scholarships coming from local government. And then that funding also helps them with the dedicated faculty to build out these programs. As I mentioned, they're thinking wider beyond just the traditional student, but understanding, what do the seniors in our community need, right? How can I work with local government to upskill their employees and make them aware? They even have high school outreach camps. So that's a really great success model at Miami-Dade. Mississippi, very different than I'd say the urban area of Miami, but they've had a really great implementation with us in our AI for Workforce program. We actually started with just one community college in Mississippi called Mississippi Gulf Coast. They were onboarding onto our program, and they have a vice president who's a real visionary. So Jonathan Woodward over there was like, hey, this is just bigger than my college, right? This is something that our whole state should be preparing for, because we want to be an AI hub in the South. So he worked together with their state workforce board, which is called Accelerate Mississippi, who totally agreed that they were for a statewide plan on AI readiness. And so they developed a multi-year plan to capitalize on the potential of AI. Currently, they have a consortium of all 15 community colleges in the state and 3 universities that are working together under one cohesive plan with unified curriculum to provide AI education and skilling, right, using our AI for Workforce program. In addition, that state workforce board provided $1 million worth of funding for labs for each of the colleges and universities in that program. And that's just step one on their statewide plan. In the future, they're planning to grow AI centers of excellence. They've got a lot of buzz in media within Mississippi, so they have business and industry coming to them now about how can they partner together, which is right in alignment with their step number 2, which is that economic impact to grow their local and state economies. And then eventually they have a plan similar to their cyber center of working with the Air Force to grow out an innovation hub. So that was a lot to share, but really it all goes back to, we know there's a gap. We know things are changing because of AI. We want to get our workforce ready. We need to get our workforce ready to stay competitive, right? And to make sure our workers are evolving and building their skills to continue to have jobs in this digital economy. To have that AI readiness for all, we need to collaborate together, right? Government, industry, academia, community. We need to really start with the human-centric AI in mind. So this graphic on the left from Jobs for the Future really talks about at the core of how we're addressing AI readiness, it should be around preparing humans, right? Remembering the human aspect. Then we think about the institutions and the ecosystems. And if we work together, we can really multiply our impact to prepare our US citizens and our workforce for the changes of AI. And that is it. I can take questions now.
Thanks so much, Christina. We have some questions in the room. This is Jennifer. I'm gonna go ahead and facilitate. You kept the microphone, so you can start. Down. There.
Oh, hey. Oh, I'm upside down. Do I look upside down to you?
Courtney did tell us you are a wonderful woman, so no one. Go upside down. Christina, this is Nagi Nagarajan, the OIP. I have a three-part question. I will ask them all. You can give a composite answer if you so choose. 30+ years ago, I got to work with the big three in Detroit. They were teaching the line workers computer literacy. Not because they wanted them to become computing professionals per se, but they wanted them to become comfortable operating the programmable logic controllers and other devices. They wanted them to get comfortable with all the quality control and so on. So the objective was not to make them computing experts, but get them to contribute to advanced manufacturing. Likewise, I'd like to understand what is Intel's, how does Intel map your needs with this particular programming you have created? The second part of the question is there an assumption that the four-year universities are already onto this? Or, leading a professional university, I know we are trying to infuse AI into our programming, but then it is, we still need some time because this all happening so quickly to modernize the curriculum and making sure we meet all the communication requirements along the way. So I'd like to know the thinking for four-year institutions and masters, baccalaureate and masters. The last one is, given your government relations portfolio, how does this align with the federal roadmap for AI, which just got rolled out this month? But I'm sure you're tracking what's going on in the domain. So it's kind of a three-part question. I'm to answer it in each one.
Okay. It's a little hard to hear everything here, so I'm trying to look at the transcription. But the first question I heard was, how does this align to our Intel needs? Is that true? Intel workforce needs?
Correct.
Okay. So this program, it's quite interesting because we have programs that are specific pipeline programs. You're probably familiar with like our Quick Start program where we're working with Portland Community College. This is different. So this is not a pipeline program that's meant to just serve the needs of Intel. So this is a program out of our government affairs group where we're looking at helping the US and states, prepare the wider workforce. So it's not just a pipeline into Intel. That being said, we very much use our Intel experts to help us build the curriculum. And we have reviewers and validators that are Intel experts looking at the curriculum, helping us with use cases. And we have hired, I think 4 interns now through this program, but it's not built as a pipeline program for us. We think we'll take a few of those students over the years. But most of this is wider US workforce. And one of the key requirements of our partner colleges is that they do a local workforce analysis and identify their partners to be able, to work with on student projects and to build that jobs pipeline locally. Did that answer the first question?
Yes.
Okay. Next one I heard is, how does this map to four-year universities? I think that's what I heard.
All right.
Okay, so our program is focused on community colleges. It's curriculum at the 100 and 200 level. As I mentioned, it's more on those solution builders. When we started in 2020, we did a scan of the environment, and we found very few AI training programs, degree programs, education programs below a master's level. Most were PhDs, some were masters. So we're coming in at the community colleges. I think at the same time, some of those universities are starting to build a four-year program. There's still not a ton of them. They still tend to be at the master's and the PhD level. So we've seen in where we have a existing degree program for a few years. So we've seen in Houston as well as here in Arizona, where people are going to the local university for, say, I've seen quite a few of these, a bachelor's degree in software engineering or CS at Arizona State University, but they'll also come to the community college to layer on a certificate in AI because they don't get access to those classes yet at ASU. They haven't built them into a bachelor's degree program yet. Some of our community colleges are working on an articulation path to their local university, but in most cases that isn't to a 4-year degree in AI because they don't have them yet. It would be a 4-year degree in CS, computer engineering, IT. Sometimes it's on an engineering track where they would have some electives as AI, and that's how their credits transfer. But I haven't heard of any of our colleges yet that have an articulation path to a bachelor's degree in AI at one of their local universities. Okay, and then the third question I didn't hear, so maybe you could repeat that. I wasn't clear on that one.
Well, this is about the federal roadmap on AI that just got rolled out in the last few days. I wonder what the federal thinking is and how does a major employer technology company like Intel align with that roadmap?
Okay, so I haven't looked at the details of that roadmap yet. What I will say is that all along we're looking at what the government's putting out, right? So back even to the previous administration at the federal level, there was, the AI task force, there were initiatives talking about preparing an AI ready workforce. There was something just in 2023 that was more of a deep dive. So we're always keeping in tune with that. And aligning to it. I will say one of the challenges that I see is that a lot coming out at the federal level is still assuming it's a 4-year program. So a bachelor's or higher, even funding opportunities from NSF that address AI are traditionally staying in universities. So we are working right now to see how we can influence folks in DC to expand that language, right, to include community colleges as well that are running these programs. But give us a few weeks and I can give you a better answer on how we align to that federal roadmap that just came out.
Hi, Christina, this is Deb Hill with Oregon STEM. So we're in that kind of a cradle to career, really focusing that K-12 along with 13 STEM hubs. And this is really exciting to see this. My question is, do you envision or does Intel have plans for bringing any of this credential down into the CTE level or computer science or in that high school space or even dual credit space?
So we are not directly targeting high schools, but what we encourage our colleges to do, and many of them do by nature, right, is they're looking at that longer, what is it, like a 10 through 18 pipeline. So again, our curriculum, like the pedagogy, it's built for adult learners. However, it's very friendly for high schoolers that are on a dual enrollment track. And we know a number of our schools that are working on dual enrollment with their local school districts. And we also know a number of schools where the high school students have just straight enrolled at the community colleges. So we have one at Central New Mexico Community College. He already graduated with as an associate's degree in parallel with graduating from high school, not as in a dual enrollment program, but as a separate program. So we don't have plans to bring this directly to high schools, but we encourage our colleges to be working with their local school districts to figure out how they can build that track. So in addition to the dual enrollment, I mentioned high school students in California, they actually do have a CTE class on the board, and they're working on a second one that's dual enrollment through their, what they call ROPs. So it's like technical high schools and where they get community college credits. So we do have that dual enrollment example in California.
And that's great to know, because I believe California puts their CTE courses kind of open source online. So
yeah, right, exactly. And once it was approved for that, it's a partner college in Orange County, California. It was available on the statewide menu, right, of CTE. So if you need any directions to those links or you want an introduction to that partner, I can certainly help there.
Oh, thank you. And eventually we'll have to help with CTE, helping educators understand the role of CTE in the classroom. But the lever Intel will work on that too. That's something we're noting. Thank you.
Right, Jeff and Brooke, and then Sarah, and then Ben Cat, and then we'll move on.
Christina. There we go. Christina, excuse me, Jeff Hamilton with Business Oregon. I'm just really grateful to see you include the success stories element to it, because I looked at the deck as you're going through, and I saw Mississippi with 15 or 16 schools, and Oregon with 2, and California at 11. And I couldn't help but think, what are they doing differently in Mississippi? And I think you spoke to it as well as to Umpqua in that example of local leadership, sort of local champion, the desire to move forward in a real meaningful way. My question for you is really around enabling policy, whether there's anything in Oregon that's inhibiting the state from moving ahead, or it's strictly a matter of, maybe I'll say, political will or leadership direction to say, this is going to be a priority. Is there anything from a policy standpoint that needs to be addressed?
Well, I wish my colleague DJ was here from our state government affairs team, because he would, I'm sure, be able to give you a super quick answer. What I know is that I honestly was impressed back in 2020, right? I've seen the AI task force that came out of Oregon, right? Really looking, I thought, very forward thinking on, let's figure out what's out there. Let's figure out what the needs are. And I love that you guys have this as a topic on the Future Ready agenda. I think there's still kind of the in between. I don't know what the policy hangup is, because I will say, like, we gave funding to Umpqua, but Portland got a good chunk of Portland Community College, where you're at, got a good chunk of federal funding to go scope out AI, right? So I think if anything, it's been pretty helpful there from the funding side. From the straight policy side, I don't know. But I think it looks like you're doing the right things to have these centralized, unified approaches. And it's good to be thorough and get all the data. And we're here when you're ready to move to the next action steps, cohesively together, like Miami is. Umpqua was kind of this dot on their own, right? And they've moved, I think, fairly fast for a rural school. But I just didn't really answer your question on the policy, so I'm sorry. We can circle back with DJ, or I don't know if Courtney has anything to add since she's in the room.
We'll follow up. I'm gonna give Sarah the microphone first, since she was first.
I'm just curious, we live in a rural community and we're wondering if there's any opportunity for online remote learners. And that's my first question, and I'm just curious if this will be available also on Coursera, like other info programs, or any future online trainings. That's the second one. And the third question, I guess, is I'm curious as to how many actually graduates of the certificate program obtain jobs at Intel.
Okay, so the first one of, is there opportunity for rural learners? So again, we tell each college it's their responsibility to understand their needs of their community and how to best deliver this. But our curriculum is instructor-led. It's built to be instructor-led. So it's not self-paced online Coursera type of stuff. It's instructor-led. And we really think that's where the benefit comes from, having that interaction with an instructor, being able to get hands-on in a lab. It can be delivered virtually, and Umpqua is offering their courses as synchronous live classes, right? So you can be in the classroom or you can be at home learning. So there already is that opportunity in your state to enroll with Umpqua Community College through an online program. So that exists. I might have missed the second question. I heard something about number of graduates. So could you repeat that?
I was curious how many graduates of the certificate program obtain jobs with Intel?
Okay, so back to the statement that I mentioned earlier, it's not a pipeline program for Intel, so we're not looking to fill a certain number of jobs or quotas. We have had a few places where there's been matches and we've taken interns. Those have all been interns so far, no actual graduates that have landed at Intel. Usually it would be in our local communities, right? We don't have any graduates out of Oregon yet. We do here in Arizona. And as I mentioned, we've taken several interns here. We haven't it just hasn't matched up. Many of our graduates here have gone on to ASU for 4-year degrees.
Hi, Brooke Brownlee with Portland General Electric. One question, I'm gonna give you them one at a time, so hopefully the transfer thing will work. My biggest question is how community colleges actually get connected to you all. Do they reach out? Do you solicit them? What does that look like?
Yeah, so initially it was us soliciting, right, when people didn't know that much about the program. Now it tends to be schools reaching out to us at this point. So we do have a website. I can give you our phone number, my email address. So if you have a school that's interested, they can reach out. We have, I mentioned 112 colleges right now. So we have quite a few in the loop that have been through our faculty training, but haven't started offering a class to students yet. So we're really focused on supporting them. And getting them up to speed. And then we have a wait list for our next batch of colleges that we would onboard.
And then related to that, I think I'm hearing that what you guys provide is the curriculum and training. And then schools are responsible for the funding for actually setting up the program. Is that accurate?
Exactly. We did offer grants in 2022 to 2023. We offered grants in partnership with the American Association of Community Colleges. That was a one-time, RFP. But outside of that, we offer our free curriculum, which is worth, I don't have the value, close to $1 million worth of curriculum. Faculty professional training, which is something that we hear a lot from the schools, right? Community colleges don't traditionally have a faculty member who's had training in AI, so it's very valuable for them to get that professional development, as well as the scaffolding, the models, right, of how we've seen schools successfully implement the program, and then partnering them together to learn from each other. So that's right, but not straight funding.
And then are there updates provided to the curriculum? Like, obviously things are changing very rapidly.
Exactly. Things are changing like crazy. So we're always developing new curriculum. We just released a generative AI course 2 weeks ago. And then we're constantly doing updates. I don't want to say constantly, but probably every 2 months we're doing refreshes. We're critical to the curriculum, but yeah, we constantly have our curriculum development team working on things. And we also take a lot of input from the colleges. So one thing that we heard maybe a year and a half, 2 years into the program is that math was a constant conversation piece, right? Do you or don't you for math prereqs as students are getting deeper into topics like computer vision? And we don't dictate that, right? We're like, what your learners needs. They came back to us and was like, no, we do need support on math. So we actually created a math for AI course. So it's a course, like a 3-credit, community college course that has a sampling of math topics that they could use to prepare their students versus having them take maybe 3 full math classes as prereqs. It's like a sampling of math topics that are applicable to AI. So we do listen to our college's needs and try to, refresh or provide new courses to help them on their journeys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. When you were,
Thank you.
Chris, can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's on. Just hold it really close.
Thank you, Christina. When you were upside down, I want to give you a thumbs up, so I was going to do a thumbs down. It's very quickly. But I like the fact that you are targeting generalists who can use AI just because it's such a pervasive technology across all economic sectors. I also had a 3-part question, but I'm going to make it 2 because I wrote asked to give an updating one. My first one is for this program, what are the metrics for success and how are we measuring against them? And secondly, what is Intel's investment in this program? If you give me a sense for that in terms of number of people, given the fact that you're updating the curriculum so frequently, and you're also targeting specific regions and the fact that you have plans to scale to 50 states. So I'd like to get a sense for that. And finally, what are your challenges and what is the support needed by Intel?
So metrics for success have evolved through the life of the program, right? Initially it was, okay, how many colleges are seeing the demand for this? And now that we have, right, over 112 colleges, it's more around how many are able to successfully start a program. So not everyone that comes to us and wants to engage ends up being able to implement a program, variety of reasons and challenges that the school has. So we look at, how many of those folks fall off versus how many are able to launch a program, which to us means we're supporting them well to be able to launch that program. And now that we're getting to the point where some are having graduates, again, it was a long, kind of timeline for them to get the state approvals off of the courses. So now that we're starting to get graduates, the new second success metric is how many of those are able to be placed in jobs. So that's because graduations just happened or are happening right now. And we probably had 10 to 15 graduates maybe before this semester, and we'll have a bump up this semester. So that's what we're tracking, how many are getting jobs, what types of industries they're getting jobs in, like what are the job titles, right, as well as internships. So that's our success metric, is we want to see, we want to see those students landing jobs that are well paying. It's a little hard for us to go that far in tracking the data just because of personal information in terms of incomes, but we can usually tell by a job title or a company, right? Yeah, this is a, a family sustaining income versus where many of these students are coming at a minimum wage job. And then the second was, what is our investment in the program?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we're not doing direct funding pass through to the schools. We're supporting them more in terms of our people resources. So the curriculum, in the US, so my group is a global group, and there's service that support the US. So specifically for the US, we have technical trainers that are available like pretty much ad hoc in addition to our formal training, but to answer questions. We do topical webinars every month or two. So we have 2 dedicated on that, and then we have 2 program managers as well that are helping with the more high level questions and looking at those things like you mentioned, right? How are we tying to the government priorities? Where are their funding streams? Where can we maybe influence helping our schools as they're starting up? So it's mostly headcount resources. As well as that curriculum, but we are lucky, as I mentioned, because we're a global team, we can develop curriculum centrally that supports many regions where Intel has a presence. Did that answer the question, or do you have a follow-up?
And the last one was, what are your challenges and what does Intel mean?
What are our challenges? Is that what I heard? Sorry, it's like, I think the mic's somewhere in the middle of the room, so I'm having a hard time hearing.
What are your main challenges and what support does Intel need to expand this program?
Okay, yeah, what are our main challenges? I'd say a good challenge is that we had a lot of interest in the last probably 6 to 9 months. So being able to adequately support our schools, as I mentioned, we have a wait list right now because we don't want to just get more numbers, right? We want to make sure that we're providing a good level of service to those colleges to succeed. So it's a good problem to have, I think, that we got so much interest that we're having to do a little pause to make sure that we can support everyone adequately that's already committed before we onboard the next group. I'd say the challenges for our schools, which sometimes become our challenges because we want to help them. It's of course always the funding, right? It takes time and resources for them to go start a program, right? We give them the curriculum, but they still have to map that. They still have to get approvals from, their department, their college, their board of regents, or whatever it may be, state board. And that takes people who aren't in the classroom teaching, and not a lot of community colleges, right, which are state-funded institutions for the most part, public community colleges, have the resources where they can just go have half a person or a full person for a year to go do this. So that's a challenge for our colleges, is carving out the resource, the person time to go implement a new program. Some of our more rural colleges also have challenges finding the right the faculty with the right skills. So you have a lot of people who are committed and have the desire, and we often say, hey, as long as they have this level of technical, we'll help train them. But many of our schools want that expert. And if you're in, a North Dakota or a more rural region like that, sometimes it takes them a while to find a skilled faculty member, or they get someone and they're great. And then after a year or two, that person turns over because they can make 3 times as much working in private industry than teaching at a public community college. So that's a consistent challenge for our colleges, is finding or maintaining skilled faculty. And so I would encourage all of you, what we tell our colleges as well is, if you're lucky enough to be in a metro area like Portland, hey, reach out to your local businesses, like adjunct faculty to come teach one class. Colleges can benefit from that hugely. So I'm doing like a plug for PCC since you're there, right? If you guys think about sharing your talents with your local community college.
Thank you, Christina. I have many follow-up questions. Let's send that back email through good meeting. I think there's a great opportunity to even do with Lisa and figure out how to expand it in more. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Christina, and for
Thank you.
being here. We really appreciate it. We are at the time in our agenda where I'm gonna let you take a break. So I think we are a little bit behind schedule, but if we could come back at about 2:05 so that we can eke our way back on track for our OD partners, that'd be great. So 2:05. Turn this over, you have to hold down the mute button. As we are all coming back to space, I'm gonna turn this over to our partners, Janelle Ives and Jeff Rhodes from the Department of Education. It's been a long day, it's been a long month. What I want us to be thinking about, I'm just gonna make a couple of remarks. So last time we met, you may remember, we heard from our partners at Business Oregon a bit more about broadband expansion and really thinking about that equity of access issue. We just heard from Intel an example of an educational program that is really leaning in on equity in digital literacy. And so as we continue to, and I encourage all of you to reach out to me, members of your leadership team, if you have ideas or things you would like to learn more about as we inform our work together. I'm gonna turn it over to our CTE partners from the Department of Education to tell us a little bit about what's happening in that high school CTE space, and really encourage you to put your hat on around systems alignment. One of the value propositions of the consortia is that we're thinking about that broad education pathway. So with that, I don't know who's starting, it looks like Janelle.
I'll start. Hi everyone, I'm Janelle Ives, the CTE State Director, and actually we'll be talking about both, because you can have CTE in high school and then it also being in post-secondary. So whenever we're talking about CTE, it's actually spanning both secondary and post-secondary and into the workforce. And just gonna give you a little bit of background about CTE, where we are, and really our career technical education programs in Oregon, really fuel the future. They have sparked the passion, they get people excited, they give them the skills, and it is really that bridge between education systems and workforce development systems. Go to the next slide. In 2018, the federal government adopted a new Perkins law. Perkins is what funds our CTE programs in the state. We get about $18 million a year in Oregon. It is split equally between secondary and post-secondary. And as part of that, we had to do some community engagement and design a 4-year strategic plan. And as part of that, we set out our vision for CTE in Oregon. So here you can see our vision for CTE in Oregon, and really we've realized through that those engagements that we cannot continue to meet the needs of our community and stay so siloed. When I entered in this position, I think I had educators yelling like, we're not workforce development, we don't, we're really developing future people. And then I had workforce people say, well, K-12, that's nice what you do, but you're not really workforce development either. So we really kind of sat in this neutral zone, but really working both worlds. And that's realization is starting to happen. So we have a new, next slide, please. We have a new CTE state plan that we just submitted to the federal government. Again, this serves as our strategic plan, but also serves as our application for that $18 million a year. And we wanted to make it a little bit simpler to just communicate this. And this is beyond just the work of people who are in CTE classrooms. This really is our state plan for how we're going to support our technical education. And we have 3 very aspirational big goals / outcomes that we're going to be striving for. And one is to really have career connected learning that's integrated throughout the system. We heard over and over again, it is too late to start thinking about careers in 9th grade. And we can't have different systems of connecting people to careers with all of our many great systems we have in learning. We also really want to increase our equitable participation in high quality CTE and career connected learning. So that is something we track because of a requirement of our federal dollars to look at expanding access. And then we really do a bad job of communicating what CTE is, its value, and having our communities, our families know about what it is. We really want to eliminate is for those students. No, careers is for everybody. We even have a questionnaire from ODE that says, are you gonna be college or career ready? And I'm like, oh, wow, so if you go to college, you don't need a career over. That's good, I did not know that. No one gave me that memo when I went to school. So next slide, please. So a little bit about career connected learning. This is relatively new to this state. It's only been talked about for the past 3 years, but it's really taken off. And it's really a framework for how we're thinking about career development and embedding it in all of our education workforce development systems. This just gives you a little map about it. It's really not a linear process. I don't know, I started out studying ants, who thought I would be CTE state director. I actually went to a PhD program studying ants and entomology. So you never know where you're gonna end up. So the skills really do help you as you move forward. Next slide. We're really focused in the next 4 years on middle school. So our federal grants allow us more flexibility. And so we're using that flexibility to think about getting middle schoolers aware of what's happening, get them some career readiness, focus them on getting excitement. And middle school is really the unforgotten, they're really the neglected years. If you think about K-12 education, middle school, you kind of like, I don't know, stinky gyms, and that's about all. Hopefully they survive and go on to high school. So we're really doing some intentional outreach and focus to our middle school schools with some resources. I'm going to share a few resources that we've developed over the past few years. We have developed some videos you can go explore, and hopefully you'll have access to this. You can use all these links. We have a new resource hub that's really geared towards family members, mentors, community-based organizations, students, teachers, that helps them think about how to do career connected learning. We have new essential employability skills, because we know from our workforce that that's pretty important. And we have a curriculum that's being rolled out to our middle school teachers. And we have chosen work-based learning as a real focus area in Oregon, because it's not only about what you know, it's sometimes about who you know. And so to build those social networks, we are focusing on work-based learning as well. Next slide, please. So how do we do CTE in the state? We actually approve every single program that's included, both secondary and post-secondary, and they must have that alignment. There are supposed to be non-duplicative sequences of classes, so the intended purpose is for efficiency, seamless transition, and continuous support. We do not have a 2-tiered system. To get federal money, the program must meet our criteria. So the post-secondary partners can only spend their federal money on programs that align to K-12, and K-12 can only have programs that align to post-secondary partners as well. Next slide. Some of the things that they have to do is pretty intense to create a CTE program. They have to be aligned to labor market needs. They have to have both industries. We have our whole skill sets, standards that are adopted in each program. Those are developed by industry. Thank you for our technology consortium. They really helped us develop our tech skill sets. We have to have career advising, student leadership. So you may have seen FFA or some of the other common student leadership. We have to have a CTE teacher. We have a lot of list of requirements that you have to have. So we really are looking at quality programs when we're approving a CTE program. Next slide. We also, 4 years ago, embarked on something unique in Oregon. Well, not unique in Oregon, unique for Oregon. Most states have this, but we had everybody do their own CTE programs to study. They were all developed locally, and we said, we need some coherence. We should have some statewide programs to study so we can do better supports for those programs. We can provide training for teachers, common equipment. Yeah, please, if you have a question.
Does post-secondary include apprenticeship?
A great question. Post-secondary, when I say it does mean that formal relationship has to be to a community college, but we do have a lot of partnerships with apprenticeship, and we do have been focusing a lot of our CTE programs. We have a lot of pre-apprenticeship that are part of our high school CTE programs. There are some other states that do some cool models that I think would be interesting in Oregon. I'll say apprenticeship is up in the air right now because new federal regulations are potentially coming out in December, which will lead to a whole interesting legal changes. But I think we're very interested in us thinking about further education and training, including apprenticeship. And in our statewide programs of study, we would be linking to all the opportunities available for students. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of the impact of CTE in the state, we have, if you look at the whole pool of secondary students, about, almost all of them have participated in CTE. We have 44,000 concentrators, 95% graduation rate. So our CTE students are graduating, and our post-secondary CTE students are being employed 6 months after completing their program. So we have really positive outcomes for students who participate in CTE. So it's a really good return on investment. Next slide. In our secondary schools, you can see that we have had, really lost a lot of CTE in 2005, and we're just slowly growing it back up. You'll see that jump in programs around 2019-20, that was Measure 98 had a huge investment. An optional investment in CTE programs, and it's kind of stabilized since then, some small growth with about 1,000 programs across the state.
Thank you, Janelle. Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Jeff Rhodes. My role with ODE, we have 6 career areas in CTE that high schools and community colleges can develop programs in. And my role is to support educators, administrators, district leadership who are wanting to develop programs in the information communication technology career area. So this is just kind of a list of some of the different programs that we currently offer in the state of Oregon on both the high school and community college level. And I will list each one off individually. You can see those there. And then also we have more included that if you get a digital copy of this presentation, you can click on the link to see what some of those are. But you can see that over the span of this career area that we've worked on trying to develop some very specific and targeted programs to meet what we hope are going to be some of the needs for industry partners moving forward. Go ahead, next slide. This is just kind of a graph that shows some of the programs in the state over the last couple of years in specific areas. One thing you'll notice is in areas such as computer programming and web and digital communication, those programs have kind of started to transition more towards information communication technology, where we house a lot of our computer science programs of study. We just had a presentation from Intel on AI, and I think our computer programming and coding programs have kind of realized that that particular skill set is transitioning, and so wanting to have more in depth. And we just in the last reset of our career area started a network and cybersecurity. And actually, this last year got our first program started in cybersecurity network. So we're hoping to grow more of those programs and create and address more career area programs that can be created. Within this career area in particular, we have the most amount of change that seems to be happening at the fastest pace. So we're trying our best to keep up with specific programs that we think are gonna meet those adaptive changes of the world of information communication technology moving forward. Next slide. Oh, go ahead, yes.
Clarifying question, when
Sure.
the program, is that an individual career?
So the program means that the high school is offering the 3 non-duplicative credits that are required to be a program of study, so that that student can transition to a community college or earn an industry recognized credential.
It's basically the number of high schools.
Correct, that's exactly right. It's the number of high schools in the state that have a full approved program in that specific content area. Yeah, absolutely.
Just going back one more.
Sure.
Slide, so just by way of background, so information technology, networks and cybersecurity, which ways are some of the standards or career pathways different from say the general catch-all?
Absolutely. So the general catch-all, those programs tend to be ones that give students a little sampling of everything. Where the other 3, the programming, coding, web visual communication, they're very targeted and they get more into the advanced level skill sets as a student moves through that program. So the general program student might not come out with some of the advanced technical skills, but they have an opportunity to kind of experience and explore the different pathways that one can find in that career area. As it gets more specific, it really targets that skill and advancing that skill to its highest level. And that's why I think our cybersecurity is so low right now, is because trying to find qualified professionals that want to step into the classroom, probably take a reduction in salary to teach those, is where we're having some challenges. One second, Jennifer's got her hand up, and we'll come back.
Very quick question, I'm dying to know where the one cybersecurity.
Oh, I can tell you this too, I believe it is in Sprague High School in Salem, Oregon. I don't quote me, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident it is in Sprague High School.
You are on the record.
So I am, but I apologize if I'm wrong, but I talked with the teacher, I've met him before, and I was just at the TSA Technology Student Association Leadership Conference, and they were there, so I feel confident I'm correct. So, yeah.
Would you be able to dig down at some point into some of these bars and tell us just demographics? So are we seeing more girls and BIPOC students in the general courses, or are we seeing even demographic kind of profile across all of these? Or
So our CT data system's a little new, we haven't really, was it 2018, we started tracking our CTE student data information.
We've been tracking, this is a requirement, we have to disaggregate all data, we have some pretty stringent privacy, so like to give you like specific school months, most of these are smaller numbers, so they'd be all suppressed. But we do have a data dashboard where you can look at by region or county or school, the participation by all the different demographics. So we do have that, and we're working towards a new dashboard in probably 2 or 3 years out, unfortunately. But yeah, disaggregation is really important. We give all of our educators and our leaders that information, just what we have publicly is to be aggregated up, but we do have that information. Actually, our post-secondary partners, you'll see some of this data in a bit, have a lot better success with more females in our ICT than we do in our secondary partners.
And one thing I can add to that is we've been working a lot with our high school CTE teachers in these career areas with the ECS curriculum that's come out of the University of Oregon that by Dr. Joanna Good. Which is professional development, which is really targeted towards expanding computer science education and targeting those underrepresented populations, females, particularly BIPOC, particularly in these program areas, to try to increase their recruiting and enrollment strategies. Because what they found is they just need to get that student in the introductory class. And if they get them in the introductory class, that pathway completion percentage is skyrocketing. But right now, that representation is hard for a lot of that population to see themselves in. So recruiting educators as well as training educators to recruit those students have been two of our priority targets we've been working within these programs specifically. So, next slide. So I apologize, the map's a little hard to see, but these are just kind of more of a geographic representation of where we see a lot of these programs. One thing I want to note is a lot of these programs share a zip code. So when going to Google My Maps, it's pretty much layered. And so there are a lot of these, like in the Beaverton, Tiger, Portland metro area, there's actually a lot more than just one little blue dot. It just stacks them all on top of each other. But you can see where right now the northwest corner is where we have a lot of our programs. Central Oregon, Southern Oregon has some. Our regional coordinator in Eastern Oregon has expressed a lot of interest in trying to develop these programs. And this is where when Janelle mentioned the statewide model, we think we can really benefit from that. Because when it was up to a local region to develop their industry partner connections that are required to be a CT program study, they were having a hard time finding industry partners in their region. So by using a statewide model, we're allowed to connect them with industry partners that might not be specific to their region, but are representing the state of Oregon. Because we know that there's students in Baker and other areas that when they graduate, they're not gonna wanna stay in Baker, right? They are wanna come to where some of these areas are. So once again, if you get a copy of this, you will be able to kind of see the entire map. You can click on each one of those little dots, it'll tell you the school, the teacher, the program, and kind of provide some more specific information about where these programs are offered in our state. Next slide, please. So concentrators, these are students that have completed at least 2 or more credits in a program of study. And this is combining all 4 of those career areas that we looked at that previous graph. You can see we kind of had a little dip after 2021. A lot of that I think was due to our pandemic and the education system navigating distance learning in the pandemic. But as Janelle mentioned, we're kind of starting to get to a place where we're starting to plateau and level off. But most all of these students are reflected in our graduation gap. That really demonstrates that CTE students are I think our highest graduating cohort in the state of Oregon. Next slide. Oh, pass back.
This is a little hard to read, but I wanted to share with you some kind of look at our race and ethnicity and participation. The blue is participants, so they've taken 1 class. Yellow are students who've taken a full year of CTE, and then the light blue are those who have achieved that concentrator status. I will say, if you look across all of our race and ethnicity, we have participation that's on par. Pretty much you can get participants in, but where we're having struggles is getting kids to stay in a program for 2 to 3 credits. And we know from research, 3 credits is the best. So the more in-depth that they have, the better experience and outcomes they have. When you add on work-based learning to that, it even skyrockets further. So our work for the next 4 years is really going to be how are we working with, it's not always the student's choice. A lot of this is scheduling complex, difficulty with that. So how are we going to be supporting our schools and encouraging not just a participant, not just take a class, see if you like it, but really dive in deep to the programs. Yes.
So the secondary pathways program that provided funding for school districts when students reached that 3rd credit, is that still in place? And initially we saw huge gains.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah, we have 2 sources of actually funding. None of them count as state funding. So our pretty much our CT programs are funded through our federal amount. But we do have secondary career pathways in high school, which is an incentive funding. It is old. It was like passed in 2015, 16, and it hasn't changed since then. When it was created, we didn't require 3 credits to be a program study. We now require 3 credits to be a program study. So actually every program in the state is now qualifies for incentive funding. And they use it pretty much as an operational fund because we don't really have maintenance funding for CTE. We have revitalization grant, which starts CTE. We have this little bit of federal money, which is supposed to enhance it. but maintenance funding is still a tricky piece in the secondary world, to cover. So most people rely on that secondary. I will say we have some grant issues with procurement, and it didn't get out this year. So they will get it for next year, but no programs actually receive money in this year.
That's too bad, because it also had incentives for students of color.
Yes.
Young women, rural students, so it's some students an opportunity to look at maybe refreshing.
Yes, and I would appreciate a legislative. Once people get money, it's really hard to change without an external. Because they can rely on their money. Do you have a question?
Is this 3 consecutive years, semester?
It's full years of class, but it doesn't have to be consecutive. So while they're in high school, we're looking at it, were they a participant while they were in high school? Did they take a full year of CTE or 2 full years of CTE while in high school? So they might have taken it 10th grade and maybe 12th grade, so that's it. Next slide. This is post-secondary data, again, Shelby was supposed to present, so I'm gonna be channeling Shelby here. And it's just, they have a new data system, they've got a way better, we're a little behind them on, ODE. But they can clearly pull out a lot of information about demographics and participation. And they actually, next slide, they have some really interesting information about who's participating and who's concentrating in their information technology. And the next one I'm gonna go to, because it does show that they're doing a great job in getting non-traditional fields. So our community colleges are rocking it and getting females to our information and communication technology programs. Next slide. I also just wanted to talk about work-based learning. This is again a new initiative we started in 2020, collecting this data. We hadn't implemented work-based learning and tracking of that in our high schools before. And so we put an estimate now that we get 5% of our students participating, and we had 33% of our students participating in work-based learning. And you can see the growth because our last reporting year we had 58% of high school CTE concentrators having these work-based learning experiences. They're not by hours, but they are sustained interaction with business and industry partners. And the most exciting thing is we're one of the most equitable states in offering work-based learning experiences. And you can look there at some of our youth from migrant families, individuals with disabilities, economically disadvantaged. I think our Pacific Islanders are the ethnicity that have the highest rate, and they are some of our most underserved population, but they have the highest rate of work-based learning experience. So really exciting work, and this is going to continue into the next 4 years.
For the sake of time, I'm gonna do these next couple slides with a lot of brevity, but please, feel free to ask questions. But one of the things, we've been partnering CTE with, are the former administration under Governor Brown, passed an executive order that directed ODE to create more access to computer science education in the state of Oregon. And so realistically, before this initiative, CTE and CTE programs were really the only place where information communication technology and computer science was offered at the high school level. So ODE hired a computer science specialist, Andrew Trump, who I worked with his team in creating what we call the computer science implementation plan, which was really centered in equity. And I'm gonna, the next slide, when we get there, we'll talk about, the outcomes of it. But one thing I want to make sure, we always get the question of, well, with these outcomes, we don't see a lot of terminology directed towards equitable access. And the goal of the entire plan is equitable access. So we felt like if we gave just a single strategy to equity, that people would think that, okay, there's one strategy for it, where really we want equity to be at the center of this plan. And all of these strategies are coming off of that goal of equitable access. So we're going to be ensuring that all schools offer computer science education opportunities K-12. So once again, not just at the high school where we've seen it at CTE, but even getting down to the elementary levels with concepts like computational thinking and introducing these programmatic thought processes to our students at a younger age. Educators, once again, how are we getting educators to have computer science backgrounds willing to step down into the role of education and be teachers? Long-term funding for computer science education that'll be legislatively driven. High quality instructional materials, similar to what we've talked about with everything CTE, are we aligning our high school and our post-secondary requirements? career connected learning opportunities, and then actually creating data to monitor and report on the progress of computer science and education in the state to see how it's making those impacts. Next slide. These are just some of the individuals involved with this project. If you have questions involving everything from STEM hubs to CTE to our digital learning team, these are just some connections you can reach out to. Yes.
So, quick question, I know with Measure 98, which was a great infusion of money into the CP program at the secondary level. At the community college level, one of the challenges we had is not having that same infusion. I don't know now, with a couple of years into it, is there any feedback on students having a disruption in where they were and then they go to a community college and it may not be the same environment or seeing any of those now?
I think that's a common one, that's why we've split our Perkins funding 50-50, even though we have a lot more high school students, because really, if you don't have that pathway and that good equipment, I think the bigger impact is the revitalization grant, which allows secondary students to build new labs, get equipment, and sometimes that's where we see a disconnect. I was happy to see some investment in career pathways, because I think that's a great alignment with the community college career pathways and CTE and aligning those. But I would say our system, I think, overall has compared to other states, a lack of funding in career technical education when we compare it with one of 5 states that don't have dedicated funding. And I'm gonna go on to the lab, and we're gonna skip the next slide. We wanna talk about AI. Email me to go. We are trying to fuse AI into our programs, and that actually leads me to a little bit of our next, and we're about to stand up a committee that's looking at AI guidance for the Department of Education and education, not just in how teachers use it, but policies that our administrators create and career readiness for our secondary students. And then go ahead into the next slide. I'm just gonna say some of the things that we do need for business and industry is we have a need, now we have these statewide programs of study to keep them fresh, keep them up to date. We are required to stay with business and industry trends. We need someone to look at our skill sets on a regular basis and say, are these the right skills? We need our industry recognized credentials that our kids earn. Are these the right credentials? We care about these credentials. We really have to have industry say. We don't want to give kids credentials that are not of value. How are we supporting that work-based learning as a system? Interesting enough, ICT is the lowest participation in work-based learning of any of our career areas, which I found very surprising because it seemed way easier than healthcare. But apparently it's not. So, and then we need our educators to hear about those trends. How are they infusing AI? How are they infusing what employers and industry is seeing as the trends in that career field? We need that information and then on an day-to-day basis so that we can keep our programs relevant and in time. And that's it. If you have any questions, we have our contact there and Jeff is here all the time.
Thanks so much, and of course, collaborating between the HEC and ODE, we've been talking about how this work of the consortia can also help in informing in these spaces. I'm gonna take staff privilege momentarily. Ronnie, can you go back to the map? I just want to, for the record, say that some people may want to stay in Baker. And so I'm just curious how you're thinking about telework and hybrid work as you're thinking about a statewide approach to technology, CTE programs, and particularly in the rural areas where there's a lot of empty space on the map. Is that something you're thinking about where tech skills, like we heard about the Central Oregon, where you have a lot of tech workforce, but they're working remotely for other employers?
Yeah, we've got several institutions that are kind of looking at creative solutions for our rural areas, and you are right, there are a lot of students in our Eastern Oregon region that want to be there, and we acknowledge that for sure. We've got several online academies, Baker Web Academy, speaking of Baker for one, for example, are kind of looking at a model in which they can provide specific programs, especially in information communication technology, because it is so digitally driven and computer place driven, but that they can provide it for multiple districts and multiple schools that cover that region. So rather than it being up to each individual district to try to expose or give some of this opportunity to students, they're looking at taking some of these virtual platforms that already exist and are offering current curriculum and education and saying, okay, what about our students in Stanfield? What about our students in these other areas? And rather than each district trying to dedicate funds and FTE to bringing in a teacher or to providing these opportunities, being a kind of centralized program, they can then help and support multiple programs in the region. So those kind of ideas are where we're getting creative. We're, I don't know if we're launching is the right term, but we're really expanding what we call CTE without limits. Which is how do we look at these different creative mediums that exist in education, juvenile detention facilities, other kind of areas where we know that this education is necessary for kids, but it doesn't fit what we consider a traditional model. And I think ICT is primed to be able to deliver those kind of that kind of access and opportunities for students because that digital divide is starting to shrink. And if we can get them where they have that access to be able to be online, then they can access some of these other institutions that have the resources to provide kids with those opportunities.
That's great, and I just think our employment landscape doesn't have the same geographic barriers that it has had historically, so it's nice to hear about programs keeping up with that. Okay, I see a few questions, and then I know, Kyle's probably itching to take the microphone away from me, so. I don't know who put their card up first, so I'm just gonna start here and work it.
Well, I think I was last, so that's good. I'm curious about this 1,088 different programs, because I think there's like 800 defined occupations. So I'm just trying to line that up with jobs.
No, those are the programs of study that are in high school. So we only have 6 career clusters, so those 1,000, that means there's 1,000 high school program.
And a high school might have multiple programs of study, right? So it could, one high school could have auto tech, health science, computer science. So we're talking about all of the individual programs.
Yeah, but there's still only 800 occupations, so I'm just trying to figure out how.
There are multiple, so you might have like 400 ag programs across the
40
state.
different programs in one school.
Right, and these are all different occupation programs.
Okay.
That's an accumulation of all of the occupation programs to make it. Does that clarify?
Yeah.
I kind of question about your comment at the end about the healthcare that you thought that would be, viewed as harder and less in demand than some of these, or I guess other, yeah. The question is, have you thought about focusing on the societal impact of the fields that you're talking about, for these programs? Because, research shows that the main reason people color the STEM disciplines is because they don't see the impact on the things they care about. And I actually really liked when Christina started talking about Intel, she led with, these are things that make people's lives better, and too often in STEM, we don't focus on that.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about developing young people today into careers, that having the difference they can make in their society is a really important conversation, particularly if you're looking at diversifying who's entering those careers. They're not necessarily in it like, I'm just making the most money. A lot of kids want to make an impact and want to have meaning. They also have a lot of anxiety right now about like, will I be able to afford to, like, they want to afford to live, they want a livable wage. But to attract those individuals, I think we have to have different conversations. I think we've had a conversation about like, what's in it for me? Oh, it's like, here's what you get from going into careers. But today's young people want to make a difference. They want to have that community impact. And so it's a really different way to approach career development than we've done in the past. And I think when we start doing that well, we'll see those diversity and kids' interest in these pathways expanded. So absolutely agree with you.
to go back to the apprenticeship question that Andrew was asking, so I've had some conversations with folks who have CTE programming in high schools who, where whatever that thing that they're talking about or teaching about, it goes into an apprenticeship program, right? Like you're not going to a college. And yet the schools are still requiring them to do all the college preparatory work, and I feel that because you know that this is true. So I want to know, how do we fix that? Because in the feedback that I've gotten from educators, it's demoralizing to those students who really actually do want to pursue this career pathway. And just last week at the workforce conference, we were looking at just the construction growth that we are gonna need in the next 8 years. And it makes me kind of want to cry because it's like 100,000 people in that's a lot of people in a very short time.
Yeah, I think we have a deep dive in apprenticeship structure in Oregon, and I get some feedback on apprenticeship all the time, like, what if you just fix it? I'm like, well, I mean, I partner with, but I think that mindset is a real challenge. I will say we have a very mindset of, again, college preparation hard. And we need to have like strong foundational knowledge for everybody so they have those opportunities and options available. But we really got a lot of bias in our K-12 system. We got a lot of bias in our families. And it is often still seen as a less than, even though today's industry, I'm hearing people say, we'll pay for a 4-year, once we get a good person in, and we'll pay, which is not an option, you know, in our case, but it's a real mindset change with our educators. And that takes time and communication and everybody having that common message. Because it's really hard to break that mindset.
Are there dollars associated with that? Like, do schools get more funding if they're sending folks to post-secondary?
No, actually, we don't have any post-secondary metrics as a part of our accountability system. So you know, some of it's accountability system, some of it's how we structure a diploma. Most diplomas across the state are re-looking at how they're doing K-12 diplomas, and there are a lot of them leading for pathways. I could give you like 20 states right now that just are changing their diploma, changing their accountability system, building career pathways in. We're not there yet.
Okay, one more question, and then we have to move on.
I'm going to cheat, 2 questions. But it kind of leads, it's a natural follow of what you just talked about. When I speak with people in rural Oregon, you talk about mindset. When you say CTE, they don't think like we do what all it includes. The basic assumption is you're going to teach me welding, you're going to teach me machining. Many folks are not thinking even beyond IT or cyber, even though we do teach all those things in our development. Really, the perception out there is most people are immediately parting with somewhere else. So one thing I would like to know is what you may be doing about it. The related question, I was speaking with the school superintendent. He's a fan of CTE, but he was so frustrated he could not get the teachers excited about this. He has a very hard time. So he sees the value, even students may see the value. But then he says, I have a hard time convincing these teachers to contribute. So.
Which I imagine wants to know that change people's mindsets, but yeah, that is why when our 3 outcomes, one of them is around communication and transparency. Like we have to communicate better, like CT is for everybody, every career you can think about. And this is an industry I think plays a big role in communicating about the importance of that blending between education and what you are seeing, what you need coming into those institutions, talking about it. Community engagement is a big requirement for schools. Businessmen show up, talk about, you know, what's important, but that mindset is gonna have to take everybody to start to shift from the top and the bottom.
Right, I suspected I suspected that this was gonna be a deep conversation, and we may wanna think about how best to continue this conversation as we think about informing sector-specific talent development policy and funding priorities. But with that, I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague, Kyle Thomas, who is ex-director of Legislative and Policy Affairs. I think I've said that right every time I've said it today. And Kyle's gonna walk us through sort of a level set on the state's budget and legislative concept development process timeline. Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Jennifer, because Dr.
You have to be super friendly with the microphone.
Okay, is this friendly on?
Yes.
Because Dr. Nagy asked 2 questions, I have to cut this a little bit short. So as Jennifer said, I'm Kyle Thompson, Director of Legislative and Policy Affairs for the HAC. So I'll start this very quickly with a couple of the investments the legislature made in the 2024 legislative session. I'll do a brief level set. I know a lot of people in this room have a high degree of fluency with the legislative process, with the budget and policy development process, but that may not be universally the case. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes there. And that'll lead into a conversation about a couple of things HAC is looking forward to potentially in terms of 2025 investments. I want to start off by being wrong. First, that says 8 million, it's actually 10 million. So in the 2024 legislative session, the legislature did a couple of tech-related things that are in HAC's purview. They may have done other things. I want to be clear, this is not all-encompassing. There may have been other investments that I have not tracked. But my role and my responsibility is to track what goes on in the HAC's budget, and so that's primarily what I'm talking about here. So House Bill 5701 allocated $10 million to public universities and community colleges to support education and training in the semiconductor related areas. The 6 institutions here: University of Oregon, Portland State University, Oregon State University, OIT, Oregon Tech, Portland Community College, and Mount Hood Community College all received dedicated line item allocations of this funding. We are in the process right now with each of those institutions individually, negotiating what those agreements look like, and setting what the goals are, what the metrics are, what the reporting requirements are around all of these investments, with the hope of being able to push those dollars out to institutions pretty soon. Next slide, please. The legislature also did something else related to semiconductors in the 24 session, which was established a semiconductor talent sustaining fund. This is for education, training, and research opportunities across the semiconductor industry. So this is basically a shell account that the legislature established that's really intended to serve as a place where funds can be added that are then not really subject to the state's biennial appropriations process. So once money ends up in this account, it will stay in that account until it's spent or until 2030. These kinds of accounts are intended to provide a little bit more stability, certainty, be less subject to the sort of political winds and the budgeting winds of the 2-year budgeting cycle that the state is tied to. There's also some hope that there could be some funds available from prior investments made through the CHIPS Act and monies that reside in Business Oregon that could be added to this fund for use for the purposes in the top line here. And next slide. And then the legislature also authorized some ongoing cybersecurity work in 2023. The legislature established a joint center operated by Portland State University, Oregon State University, the University of Oregon, and Mount Hood Community College to provide education, awareness, and training to both public and private sector entities on cybersecurity issues. And so the legislature authorized tech to go ahead and spend the dollars that you see in these 3 pots in order to facilitate the ongoing operations of that center and to start to push out workforce development grants and other types of grants you see here. Next slide. So that was all in all a pretty modest set of investments. The even-year legislative sessions tend to be pretty modest years for additional investment because the majority of the legislature's budget setting actually occurs during the odd years. With the exception of 2022, but that's when all the federal funds were coming into the state related to the American Rescue Plan Act and other pandemic era investments that the federal government was making. So here's where I'm going to do just a little bit of definition level setting here, because I'll talk about these terms in the next couple of minutes, and I just want to make sure everyone understands what they are. So the top
4 terms, or really budget-related terms, that we use in state budgeting. So current service level, that's the cost of doing tomorrow what the state does today. The state budgets on a current service level basis. And so every policy option package that gets proposed by state agencies is set relative to the current service level. So when you hear agencies talking about a $25 million pot, that means the agency is proposing to spend $25 million more above what the agency's current service level is on whatever the particular policy initiative is they're proposing. Agency recommended budget. Every agency in the state of Oregon puts one together. It's a recommendation to the governor's office and to the Department of Administrative Services about what the agency would like to see in terms of ongoing and new investments for the upcoming 2-year period. That is, of course, just a recommendation to the governor. The governor takes all of those recommendations and in December of the even year publishes her governor's recommended budget, which must, according to state law, be balanced relative to the revenues that the state expects to receive. And it's that budget that the legislature takes and over the course of the legislative session chews on, makes amendments to, completely discards, and builds their own as the case may be. So I've used this term a couple times already, biennium or biennial. So the state budget process is and policymaking process is really a 2-year cycle. So we run odd year to odd year. So July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2025 will be the next biennial budget. And that is the budget that we are really already underway planning for and building the agency recommended budget to support. And then lastly, legislative concept or LC. That is a proposal for a bill to be introduced at the legislature. So you can skip the next slide, Roland, please, thank you. So budget and policy planning in the state really kind of occurs in 4 main phases leading up to the start of the legislative session. There are, these lines are a little bit blurred, they're not quite as black and white as these categories make them seem. But in the conceptualization stage, which for HEC really starts, I would say, October, November of the odd year. So October, November of last year. This is when the budget instructions are released. This is when agencies are really at work developing problem statements, considering sort of the realm of possible solutions to address that problem. Doing a lot of examination of context and history, really trying to determine what is going to be a policy action package or a budget package, what is going to require statutory changes or what needs both. That leads into the drafting stage in the course of April through July. That's where we really are right now. That's when the state determines what the current service level budget actually is at the end of this month. That determination will get made. It's when agencies are starting to settle on the solution to the problems that they have identified. It's when agencies are starting to think about scalability, knowing that everything that goes into an agency recommended budget is not likely to get funded at the full amount. It's when agencies are thinking about what size a loaf, half a loaf really is. It is when for us, that is about a 9-month period of time, these first two phases. It's these phases where partners and folks sort of outside state agencies are really have their maximum opportunity to influence what will go into the agency recommended budget. And it's probably their maximum amount of influence what will happen to influence what will happen until the legislature then convenes in January and the political process sort of kicks off anew. The last 2 stages are a little bit more technical over the finalization stage. It's when the relevant budget documents are getting presented. It's when the legislative concepts that agencies are proposing are getting drafted into the technical statutory language that they have to be drafted into to be introduced as bills. And then finally, the decision-making stage, all of it gets handed off to the governor's office. And over the course of the last few months of this current year, the governor and her team will make all of the decisions about which legislative concepts get introduced, and ultimately what her governor's recommended budget will say. Next slide, please. So just a couple of specifics about the kind of environment we're operating in this budget planning cycle. First, there is a limitation on what agencies are able to request as part of their agency recommended budgets this year. For HEC, that is 1% above the current service level. That is $31 million on our budget. I say sort of here, and that is because there are some potential exceptions that we may see to that cap. First, the college and university support funds have essentially, we've already been given the signal, those are likely to be exempt from that $31 million cap. Sensibly, they kind of have to be, because if they were included in that cap, not only would we be significantly underfunding institutions relative to what their current service level actually is, but we would have no room to make any other types of investments. Student financial aid may be exempt from that cap, and then potentially some other items as well, particularly those items that HEC may produce that align with the governor's long-standing priorities. So this governor has been laser focused on the issues of housing and homelessness, behavioral health and addiction, as well as pre-K through 12th grade education. So that, to the extent that HEC has initiatives or will have initiatives that may support these areas, those areas may be exempt from the cap as well. And indeed, we are working on a number of initiatives that are adjacent to or directly support these areas. Lastly, partner engagement, I think unlike in prior cycles, is really just getting underway. So we have more or less been in a quiet phase of initiative planning up until really just the last couple of weeks. And so right now we're beginning the process of starting to socialize what it is that the agency is thinking it would like to see in its agency recommended budget, in its LCs, incorporating feedback we hear from partners, taking initiatives that partners have that they want the agency to see and considering those, and ultimately we'll factor all of that into the finalization process as we head into the summer and the fall. Next slide, please. And so that turns me really back to Jennifer, who's going to take a few minutes here and talk about one of the initiatives we are looking at introducing as part of the agency recommended budget, and that's a continuation of the Future Ready Oregon program.
Thank you, Kyle. You can stay maybe with the microphone, and we'll open it up to questions after I just speak to what we're envisioning. So as Kyle mentioned, we're in the like squarely in the phase where we're informing HEC's agency request budget and the initiatives therein. The commission heard an overview of the legislative concepts and policy action packages. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago at their May meeting. And so one of the priority policy action packages is a continuation of the Future Ready Oregon funding. So we thought very timely that you all are meeting today that we would just provide a quick overview. Essentially, the policy action package would include the reauthorization of the Federal American Rescue Plan Act funding that has already been committed to Future Ready Oregon, and then continuing workforce investments. So essentially, by the end of 2024, all of the federal ARPA funding authorized through Future Ready Oregon has to be obligated or under contract. So the next round of funding that you all have formed will be open soon. And as that closes, all of that funding has to be under fully executed grant agreements by December 31st of this year. And then has to be spent by the end of 2026. So on a biennial cycle, anything that we have not actually spent, or in our case, reimbursed to grantees or dispersed to grantees by June 30 of 2025, that spending authority has to be reauthorized as part of HEC's 25-27 biennial budget. So these would be funds that are already obligated but not yet spent. We are then also seeking an additional investment of $75 million in general fund that would continue the investment in Future Ready Oregon. This would, sorry, I lost track of my notes, I went off script, I shouldn't do that. The 75 million will continue investments in Future Ready Oregon and other workforce development programs that have demonstrated success in responding both to critical workforce shortages and strategic workforce opportunities. So you may remember when Future Ready Oregon passed initially, the legislature directed that healthcare, manufacturing, and technology were key sectors of our economy that warranted a focused strategic effort around workforce and talent development. And so this would continue that sector focused approach. It will integrate proven best practices from Future Ready Oregon programs and align Future Ready statutes with other workforce development statutes to contribute to this ongoing systems alignment or more unified workforce system. And so we're in the process of developing what the particulars will look like based on the timeline that Kyle just presented. We anticipate that over the next month to 2 months, we'll be convening a small work group to inform the particulars. But the intention is how we take what we've learned from Future Ready Oregon. I think I've showed you sort of a spider web slide, but there were 8 program investments within Future Ready Oregon. What have we learned? What's working? Last time we met, our director of the Office of Research and Data at HEC walked through our annual report and some of the findings. But really the themes around centering the needs of the priority populations identified in Senate Bill 1545, continuing to facilitate and leverage partnerships that include business and industry, education, and community partners, focusing our strategy around key sectors of the economy, but thinking about critical workforce shortages and strategic workforce opportunities. And then the flexibility of the funding is just something we hear regularly as the key to either come alongside and leverage existing workforce resources that might be more restrictive and improve outcomes, or providing the flexibility to serve individuals in new ways. So I will pause there. The intention for the balance of our time, certainly open up for questions of Kyle or myself about HEC's agency request budget development process. And then I was going to turn it over to Lisa, Skip, and then Kat to just lead us through a discussion about what are folks' priorities for 25-27 as you're thinking about your own priorities, your own organization's priorities. Are there opportunities to collaborate or facilitate alignment? But before I turn it over to them, I thought I'd pause for questions of either Kyle or myself.
One question on the new investment. As we are discussing here, often we have talked about sustainability of programs with the initial investment. When we are seeking new investment, what is the kind of thinking? Are we looking at expansion or reinvesting in some of the programs that have been started as part of the first few rounds?
So since Jennifer is the director of the program, I'm going to let her answer.
In terms of the programs themselves, I think that's yet to be determined. We'll be informing that level of detail. the more we're learning about the projects that we've already invested in, as many of them were established with sustainability in mind. And we believe that there is a significant unmet need when we look at the amount of resources that have been requested through these initial rounds of funding.
I'm not sure which one of these questions for. So are we looking at the new investment as falling under the current service level, considering 75 million is double what your 1% cap is, or is the thought that this would be a request that would come from outside of the by the consortiums of partners?
So those two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. First is, yeah, we recognize that 75 is greater than 31. And so it is entirely possible, right, that this investment does not end up in the agency recommended budget, or if it ends up in the agency recommended budget, it looks different than what you're seeing right here. Or that if it ends up in the governor's recommended budget, it's exempt from our cap, or if it doesn't end up in the governor's recommended budget, folks in the legislature who are talking to folks around this table or in other circles get wind of the need for this investment and introduce it as part of their legislative budget. The number of permutations is infinite as to how this could possibly end up in the budget. To answer your technical question, 75 million, this is new investment, so this is on top of the current system.
I feel like for the public record, I had a question slipped to me. So I thought I'd just share it with the group or here.
Should I ask that? Okay. My question was whether the new investment you mentioned, industry sectors continue to focus on sectors. My question was whether that means the existing identified sectors or new or both.
And my answer is likely both. It's part of the conversation we'll be having with a work group, but the intention of the ongoing investment in healthcare, manufacturing, and technology, and exploring whether there's an opportunity to create space for identifying other critical workforce shortages or strategic opportunities. I think the challenge will always be not watering down the investment such that it's not making that focused strategic advancement. But currently the objective is to retain healthcare manufacturing technology. That would be the primary focus.
I have a quick question for you, just as it's my own learning. So as we've been working on system alignment, data-driven decision making these last few years, we are seeing this need. We don't know if it's a legislative concept, so just asking this group about just redefining career readiness in the state and really flattening the cradle to career, so making really smooth pathways and transitions from, elementary, middle school, high school, all the way through post-secondary apprenticeship into career. So does our career readiness sit in the heck? Does it sit under Future Ready Oregon? Is that something that OTE would lead? Like where, if we were to think about a career readiness, like really mapping from the student point of view, where does that originate? Is that part of Future Ready Oregon? And I might be the quick 101 I'm really thinking about, and that's what the role is of these three consortia.
It's a great question. I think in healthcare, manufacturing, and technology, there's absolutely space to be having those conversations. And I'm looking back at my healthcare and manufacturing colleagues in the back room. I would say the consortia are having those conversations. And so as we sort of shift to discussion, when you're thinking about workforce priorities for 25-27, if there's opportunities for alignment, career pathway development sort of lowercase c, lowercase b, not necessarily specifically post-secondary career pathways as a community college program, but career pathway, career laddering, understanding where education programs align with occupation opportunities, and maybe peppering in a little bit about wages, is absolutely something that Consortia can be working on. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to our fearless leaders to consider these questions, and lead a conversation with y'all.
Sure. So I'd be interested, what are each of you, your organization's priorities for the 25-26 workforce target? The first question, just what are the workforce priorities you're looking at for the next legislative session?
I think unless there is somebody online. The universities are working on behavioral health, the next phase. We got some preliminary investment this year. We are also working on childcare related activities across 7 universities, early childhood education. Of course, being a Polytechnic University, we are partnering with community colleges on behavioral as well as healthcare other issues. Something along with some academics. I wanted to understand the last question a bit better. What priorities need additional policy development? What is the co-creation and input from the consortium? I didn't understand that.
I think that is where Deb's question fits, is where are there opportunities for the consortium to be partnering, co-creating, providing input to priorities, and one that I heard suggested was around career pathway development, better understanding that career readiness.
Backing into what does that all entail through all of the education and workforce system. So it's an alignment strategy that others, 30 states have done it. There's 20 who have not, under the conditions for career readiness. It was a report that came out in November 2022. We're one of the 20 who has not really mapped that pathway. So it may be some research we could do and look at what other states have done in that space and not actually create the bill and pull from that framework. I have to go catch a train home.
Sure, so from TAO standpoint, we've got a few different priorities that we're tracking that fall into a couple different categories. One is as it relates to AI, which I referenced in the opening remarks. There's a definitions-based initiative that's going on right now that's going to conclude in time for the end of this calendar year. And that's designed to kind of level set anticipating flurry of AI related bills in 2025 and beyond. And there's also the Governor's AI Council, which is more narrowly focused on government use at the state level of AI technologies, including issues of potential bias and areas where there maybe is a heightened need for scrutiny because of the sensitive nature of the type of data being collected or the types of decisions being made. So a lot of that is tracking with what are other states doing, and had a presentation already from Vermont, which created an AI specific position at the state level, looking at that as one potential model. And then there's also the federal guidance that Dr. Nagy also emphasized that was just released this week from Congress. But then of course there's federal guidance that was issued by the White House in November of last year as well, in terms of principles around areas of particular sensitivity, largely around healthcare, financial decisions, incarceration, public safety issues where stakes are higher. And so we need to think carefully about automated decision systems and AI. So, those are two efforts underway. There's a third, it's percolating, which would likely be the form of a bill, to create yet another AI council to be more of a standing body. This is coming out of the Joint Legislative Committee on Information and Technology for the legislature. And this is only in legislative concept form at this point. But the idea there would be more of a standing body, comprised of a mix of public, private, academic, nonprofit leaders, much like the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, with an eye toward workforce issues, among other things, potentially. And this would be a more expansive look at AI issues at the state level. So that's something that's TBD at this point, very much concept stage, but that's something we're definitely tracking. I think it makes sense, and I also think it's something that, whether it lives there or complements a broader effort at the statewide level to look at how local governments, state government agencies, academic and workforce and private sector can kind of receive guidance from folks who are at the kind of leading edge of the technology and seeing where it's going, but also folks from a variety of different sectors who might have issues with where AI is headed. So those are three areas in AI, and there's a second area where we're focused on, which is IT modernization. And there's a lot of workforce shortages across the public sector, which impact service delivery across a number of areas where critical services for governments and businesses. And so that's an area too where there's a big workforce need. As IT gets modernized, there are big gaps in terms of state and local government workforce needs. So a big opportunity there to reimagine how the public sector recruits and trains and provides people with career pathways as they're looking to kind of develop their skill sets. So that's an area too where we're really focused. We don't have anything specific in terms of an actual bill at this point, but through the work of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, potentially a future AI council, that could be part of it.
And I can tag on for the community colleges, there's 5 areas we're looking at. 3 that really relate to this area, related to cybersecurity, but it's less on the training than actually on an investment in keeping our institutions safe. In this last year, I think we've had 3 of our 17 institutions with some form of an attack. So that's a priority for us. There's also another initiative around bringing adults back. We know that there's 400,000 adults in Oregon that are underskilled and underskilled. And there were 2 colleges, not to be one, that participated in a national study through America on how to bring them back, and it's simple strategies. That's now that research has been piloted in all 17 colleges, and we're just going to have the results sometime in the summer. But trying to find ways to reduce barriers to get people back, and these are folks that have some credit but no degree. And figuring out how to transition that into degrees, credentials, something that can improve their workforce outcomes. And then the last one is around the Applied Baccalaureate programs. Those have been approved, but there is no state support for those degrees. So the colleges are doing them on their job. So those are the primary priorities for us.
Any others? I want to ask for the discussion. Yeah. I missed Turner.
Just because I think one of only a few like actual industry partners here to talk about the 25 to 27 plan, like unclear. I can tell you maybe what the rest of 24 looks like. And so this is the challenge, right? This is where the crossover can be. I don't even know if it can be better, but it can just be better communicated, basically, which is like we went through a reduction in force. We were not the only ones by any means, we were one of the last ones actually to do that. It was small, which is great, but at the same time, we're building up our, after we pared back, we're actually building up our growth again and figuring out where to have that. So we're so aligned to just the industry or just the market fluctuations that having any sort of predictable path is so challenging. We want to have 20% growth. Does that mean 20% headcount growth? IDK, like, it's really just because like, we have 20% revenue growth, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're hiring 20% more people, especially with the influx of AI, especially with the influx of roles that we don't need to add 4 headcount, we can add 2 headcount. We were talking a little bit about it as far as like the roles that AI might call out. We love to not spend money on things, and so if we can spend less money on headcount, we're not necessarily creating new roles that we can reimagine because we don't have to spend that money on the roles that AI is filtering away from us. So I don't know, I'm just presenting more problems really, but I think that these are the things that I think about. And when we have these sort of kind of the ability to have this like crossover type conversation, it's really great to see how the nimbleness lies more on our side of my side of the table, and how do we open up that line of communication a little bit better and get the public sector like informed of everything, and just make sure that like we're not just like over here like whatever, it doesn't matter, degrees don't matter. But like we definitely want to think about it in terms of how do we actually what we do in this room, how does what we do in this room serve longer term? And it's just so hard. It's like a concrete thing that takes 2 years to really shift through, and then 2 more years to plan out the 4 years in the future. So anyways, that was my long diatribe about it, but my wheels always like turning in our conversations, and like this is where I'm at, and how do we open that communication more, and not, so it's not just me Corinne, I am telling you about this, but it's the actual industry telling you about this too.
That's so great. It's a great reminder of what I think of as sort of 2 buckets about industry engagement. One is what maybe I'll call demand planning. And we've talked a little bit about it here. We're certainly talking about it in healthcare manufacturing as well. And hope to hear from employer partners across the state. How do you think about workforce demand? But that workforce demand is twofold. It's headcount, it reflects economic trends, but it's also what do you need from the workforce and how is that changing? And we heard about AI for the workforce from an education model perspective today. Sort of how are we rethinking the future of work? And it's so important to hear from employers what are the value credentials that you need? What are the skills that you're looking for, and where are their gaps? And so appreciate your comments. And I think in each of the industry consortia, we see these as spaces where we can facilitate some of that alignment around industry informed strategies that are advancing the work that's happening in the education system and supporting diverse individuals into employment opportunities. I see Wade's virtual hand up, and Brooke, you have your virtual hand up again. Okay, Wade and then Brooke, and I don't have a clock, but I think we're getting close to time.
I would just say, I think we saw some pretty low hanging fruits today, and so I think there's work that could be done to support. See, if you have CTE programs that can't find stable funding and stable workforce for those programs, that is a fixable problem. Intel has a version that we can. That's a fixable problem through funding efforts. And then my main is to really look at how do we reach back into the lower grade levels in a way that's safe and respectful, that creates a pathway that's less like choose today what you're going to do. That's really stressful and disconcerting to young people.
I don't know that I can follow that, but I concur that. I was just gonna make the note that, as the chair, also with my hat on as the chair of the local workforce board, the importance of leveraging the local workforce boards and their expertise because they know the communities much better than many of the folks, you know, even at this table. I would say like our team in Clackamas County knows Clackamas County very well, and Andrew's team knows, you know, Portland very well. So making sure that we're thinking about how the workforce boards can help inform this work in a more meaningful way across the state, because I think we'll get a better result using their expertise.
Thank you. Okay, I see Andrew's card up and then we're gonna adjourn.
All right, well, I'll skip the executive angle or the legislative angle and talk a little bit about an executive angle potentially. And that is, there's a lot of new resources that are coming into the state, CHIPS, infrastructure, Build Back Better. All of them have workforce components embedded in them. And we run the risk of sort of squandering the opportunity there if someone doesn't stand back and coordinate how those efforts work together. So we are meeting with the governor's office to talk about an executive order to potentially look at ways to string those opportunities together. So I think that's a place where we could all work together to make sure Oregon is best positioned to take advantage of these generational resources.
Thank you for that. All right, oh, Kyle. Very quick.
I'll be very fast. I was gonna be sort of on the other end of Brooks' alignment. And my suggestion is just, I suspect we'll see a lot around K-12 education in the coming legislative session. And every single conversation gets back to that foundation that needs to be really laid in those early years. Every conversation I have with an employer talks about we've got to start early. So I think there's such opportunity for us to look into all of those K-12 conversations to decide really where there are opportunities to, for alignment, how we can support the STEM hub network, how we can really build up a strong STEM council and education plan, but also just even that career readiness. You know, as we look at the accountability model in the state for K-12 education, what does career readiness look like as an accountability measure? We don't know these things, but we all could be influential in saying it's very important to be thinking about this across the entire continuum.
All right, thank you. Fruitful discussion. Do any of you have closing remarks or should I just, okay. So our final slide is just thank you for your time today. This has been a really good, again, sort of seeding the conversation about next steps. Hopefully this prompted some creative thinking for all of you. Our next consortium meeting is scheduled for July 31st. The time and location is TBD, but hopefully, or the time, maybe the time is already, yes, time is already committed and should be on your calendars. Location is TBD. But we look forward to continuing this conversation then, and we'll make sure that you have all of the slide decks are in your packets today, but we'll also make sure that those get posted to the website so that some of those live links are available to you and access to follow-up contact information. Thank you all so much. Safe travels home.